Yeah. Can you hear me?
I hear you, Kev. I don't see you.
No, I'm actually waiting for so I got a message a little while ago from Kevin Miller that he couldn't log in.
Oh, yes.
So I just have to get him started here. And then I'll hand over the keys to whomever wants the keys.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to tell Kevin that I got it started for him.
Oh, I'll text him right now.
Okay. The person who has their hand up, are they part of your committee?
Who has the hand up? Let's see.
Hey,
Oh,
Kevin.
yes, Grant. Yes, Grant is on this. Yep.
Okay.
Kevin, you're muted.
Kate, how did you manage to pull that off?
I did absolutely nothing. I will take the credit happily, but I did nothing.
How did that happen?
It's Jason.
Oh, Jay, okay. Thank you so much.
It was all me,
You
Jay,
got
right?
It was definitely you, Kate.
Yeah, I mean, obviously.
It's out of sight.
I was
I'm gonna hand you over the host, Kevin. Okay.
okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Grant.
And I will jump off now. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Jay.
Thanks,
Hey, Jay.
Jay.
Yep. Bye bye.
Oh, well, now we know that Jay, devoted town servant that he is, monitors his voicemail at 7 o'clock at night, because I just called him, 10 minutes ago with this frantic message, because what was happening was, fans, I was getting this demand for like a passcode that I'd never been asked before, like a verification kind of thing. And it goes to the town email, which I don't have access to. So I was in a dead panic calling people to try to see who could help. And so many, 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 many thanks to our IT guru for swooping in and kind of getting us all fixed up. So at 7:06 p.m., with apologies for the delay, I will call the August 23rd meeting of the Historical Commission, Southborough Historical Commission, to order, and noting that all members are present, which would be Jim Blaschke, Annie Pfaff, Kate Battles, Grant Farrington, and myself. And so I'm just going to check our participants right now, and in the attendees list, great. Ray Hokinson, representing the Southborough Village Society. So that's the first item on our agenda, and I'm going to bring Ray over. And okay, Ray, you're with us. And again, Ray's here, one of the directors of the Southborough Village Society, to talk about, and Ray, well, you don't have to be, but if you would like to be on camera, we'd be delighted to look at you. Your call.
That's okay. You can put me on camera if you want.
Let's see, if I promote you to panelist, I think that will do it. And then you've got to turn on your video. Wait, hang on one second. There we go. Oops. Great. And you're muted.
Okay.
There you go. Okay, so Ray's with us, and the Southborough Village Society is going to celebrate its 100th anniversary this year. And so Ray reached out to me, and I know I mentioned this at our last meeting about coming over and sort of telling us about what they're up to, and all the sort of cool things that they do. And Ray, did you want me to bring up the PowerPoint that you sent me?
I think it's probably better if you drive and I just speak to the PowerPoint. Just
Okay.
so
That will require a little finesse on my part. I got to make sure I can share screen and try to manage that. Hang on, folks.
A year ago, I knew more about Zoom than I do now, but after school stopped, I've lost any skills I had.
Now, I actually restarted my computer in the midst of my sort of technical frenzy. And I want to make sure that there's several items I need to bring up tonight. And of course, I think it closed out, Ray, your PowerPoint. Just hang on one second. I'm going to stop the share. Again, I'm sorry that all this goes back to this little technical kerfuffle we had. I'm going to look for Ray's. You sent it to me, and I've got to. Oh, here it is. Okay. Okay, and go back to the meeting. Oh boy. Okay, I think I've got it. Can you all see that now?
I can see it.
Yes.
Yep.
And let me put it in the proper, gosh, it all gets complicated.
It's usually slideshow.
Yeah.
Slideshow from
Yep.
the first slide.
There
Okay.
we go.
Now
Okay.
I'll talk to the slides and you can step through it if you wish.
And yeah, just tell me when to change. You want the new picture, Ray, and I'll advance.
Okay.
Everyone can see that okay? Or is my my window pane blocking?
That looks great.
It
Yeah,
looks
it's
okay.
Pictures might block a little bit of the view, but they're not all that critical. Nothing down the right side, I hope. Back one slide.
Oops.
First slide.
Yep.
All right, so I'm a member of the Southborough Village Society, most commonly known as the Southborough Community House. And we are celebrating our centennial celebration in this year. And we're going to coordinate it with it, since the rest of the town will be celebrating Heritage Day. We're going to celebrate our centennial on Heritage Day and coordinate it with and sort of mix it in with the Heritage Day celebrations. Of course, the picture that you see there, you recognize as part of the historic district, and it's 28 Main Street. The property was donated by Charles Francis Choate, a Southborough resident. Charles Francis Choate Jr., his father is also a lawyer as well. He donated it in 1922 to the people of Southborough. And sometimes it's confused by a lot of people in Southborough, but it is not a municipal government property, but it's held and managed by a nonprofit organization called the Southborough Village Society. We can step to the next. Probably our one way of advertising the centennial, it will be with celebration centennial banners that will be hung from the wraparound porch, one facing Main Street, one facing Route 85, so that all the traffic going by, we hope, will be able to see it. We will probably also notify through My Southborough and we've made public openings to the town government, et cetera. So I think we're going to be pretty obvious that we're celebrating the centennial. So basically the banners. The banners were actually took us a couple weeks because there's the old zoning planning guide about signs, and it was a question as to whether this sign banner was legal, but we got it approved by the selectmen and by the town planner, so that's all official. Next slide. There's another picture of the house from sort of the Main Street view. The community house also houses the American Legion and the VFW post. It is in the 1921 East Addition basement. So it's in the basement of that addition to the left. And you can kind of see the signs there, the Bagley Fay post, the VFW Chokepost. This was a stipulation by the donor, Charles Francis Choate Jr., in his donation that we also must house the VFW and the veterans. And this was just after World War I, and Choate was very supportive of the veterans. So it's a combination of, it's a Southborough community house, but it also houses the veterans. Next page. This is boilerplate stolen off of My Southborough, and it's the same information that sits in the town Macris database. And I think I'm just going to briefly go through it so that we don't, it's there for purpose. And like I said, if you want, you can either go to My Southborough and search for community house, or you can see it in the Macris database. The house itself was built in 1906 by a Boston lawyer by the name of William White. The house was then sold to a friend, a lawyer friend of William White, which was Charles Francis Choate Jr. He bought the house in 1921 and then almost immediately turned it over to what was a new organization in town, the Southborough Village Society, to be used as a meeting place. The next paragraph talks a little bit about some of the histories in the town and how the house sort of served a social purpose. It served teas on weekday afternoons, hosted sewing circles, card parties, etc. Mostly now it's used for meetings, quiet parties, events, Santa, Easter eggs, Easter egg hunts, and other sort of community events. It is available for rent. If anybody's done it, I think a lot of people have at times done it and participated in the building. Like I noted, it was built in 1906. It replaced another house that dated to 1833. And also somewhere in the last paragraph, it says that it is shared with the veterans, the VFW and the American Legion. Next slide. This is just a statement saying, okay, here's the Southborough Village Society, and we are a nonprofit tax exempt organization. If you Google us, you'll find out that we're pretty reputable and that all the money that we take in applies to the house. There's no compensation, no salary. All funds and rental fees go to the house operation and upkeep. Listed there currently are our directors. There's B. Ginga, who is the treasurer and also the caretaker. Betty Minucci, Dan Donahue, who lives across the street on 85, immediately across the street on 85. He's the current president. Margaret Harding, I guess she takes our notes and writes our minutes. I'm a director, and Steve Phillips, who used to live right next to the community house. He was the vice president. And the three at the bottom are new, relatively new, and have been very active in helping us get the Centennial organization going. John Dunn, Karen Anglin, and Amy Yazdani. So they're new and assistant, and they've been of great help. Previously, prior to the Centennial operations, most of our work is to make sure that the maintenance of the building was fine, all the bills were paid, and we did a lot of renovations over the past 5 to 8 years that I've been involved. And so that's really what our work is. And so this has just been a little bit different approach over the past few months, trying to prepare for the Centennial. Probably let's go to the next slide just real quick. If you've never been inside the community house, and I understand there's a few people who haven't, sort of I go clockwise. There's a meeting room. It's, you know, generally it's usually got a table and a bunch of chairs, and it was probably served as the house dining room at one time. That's on the top left. Next is sort of what would have been the formal living area, and that's just sort of a very formal receptive room. It's actually quite large and can house quite a good get-together. Picture that I took at the far right, top right, that's the remains of the bowling alley. Sometimes there's discussions, oh, there used to be a bowling alley there. Well, the bowling alley was a separate building. The only thing that exists is the foundations of it. Seems to have been built roughly around 1922 or shortly thereafter. Survived into the 60s, and I'm told by B that it pretty much became decrepit and falling down by the 70s. So it really hasn't been functioning in a long time. It's interesting little sort of foundation work, and it sort of sits in a hidden area on the property. The two bottom rooms are the addition, the 1921 addition that sits at the east side. And it's usually just, we call it the great room. And the first one is the view towards the west, and the other one's the view towards the east. There is also a kitchen in the house. The pictures on the kitchen that we had weren't very good. They showed too many garbage cans and clutter, so we didn't include that. In the one view, you can kind of see the stairs in the foyer, but there's no separate picture for that. And the caretaker apartment is upstairs and is a living room, bedroom, and kitchen area. Let's flip over to this, and this is really our plans. Here's the plans that we're trying to do to coordinate with Heritage Day, which is October 10th, Monday, October 10th. It's Columbus Day. So our goals over the past few months is to try to tell the community house story. We finally have a web page in development. So, and that's our domain name. And there's something there, but not much at the moment. We're trying to fill it with content, including photographs of the house, photographs of parties that have occurred there, people using the community house, as well as some historical stories of the people involved. Photos have been started, and we've contacted and contracted with a local student photographer, trying to keep it local and trying to develop the talents of some of the high school students. Sally Waters from the Historical Society has agreed in assisting us with some of the people stories. And she's actually connected us with the line below, that she's been able to find living Choate descendants that will be in attendance or expected to be in attendance at the Centennial. We, by ourselves, without Sally's help, we hit a whole bunch of dead ends on that, and it seemed like everybody was dying off. But we got a few live people, and we hope to connect with a few more, so that we're trying to pull back the history and get the Choates back involved. We want to make the Centennial inclusive and trying to get community engagement. We've got outreach to the schools with activities, contests, and history games. Outreach to the Scouts, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. They've always been helpful around the community house, helping with landscaping projects and other projects around the house. We're going to keep them engaged. And that one of the reasons we're talking to you today is we want an outreach to the Historical Commission and the Historical Society and town government in any way, shape, or form when we can engage those and work on common agendas. We'd like to get the Historic Commission, Historical Society, and town government involved in helping us celebrate the Centennial. We're seeking 1920s era antique cars for the Heritage Day Parade. Sometimes the parade can be big and sometimes it can be small, and most of the floats have gone away. Every once in a while we see an antique car. Well, we're trying to get some in there. We've got some Antique cars, I'm not sure we've hit 1920 yet, but that's still being worked. We're hoping to coordinate with the Rotary Club as far as food trucks on Heritage Day, and maybe we're going to try to host one on our property to help pull some of the people attending Heritage Day over to the community house. I think parking the antique cars on the property, if we have them, that'll be a pull to get people over there to explore a little bit about what the community house has to offer. Selectmen and state reps will be in attendance, and we'll have little short speeches and a citation and proclamation. So the selectmen have agreed to participate. Our state reps, as I recall, have agreed, or at least the one who's currently our state rep. Well, they usually come along and participate in the brief parade anyway, so they'll come by afterwards, and we'll have to work through the details of our agenda, but there will be something at the community house after the parade, immediately after the parade. We always have a yearly funding newsletter. As I point out, we are a nonprofit and we do not receive a single penny in tax dollars from the town. So we fund by the community itself. We're going to have a Centennial named brick option where if you donate a certain amount, and I think it's like $100 for the Centennial, that you can have your names or your family names on bricks. And we're going to build a brick surround around the flagpole. And we're also looking forward to trying to get some students involved with historic scripted character stories inside the house for people who go into the house and want to have a tours. Maybe we can get some people in 1920s garb to tell a little bit about each individual room that they come into. Let's check out the next slide. I don't have much more. That's pretty much what we're planning for Heritage Day. But one of the reasons for reaching out to you guys is that there's current historic commemorations ongoing in Southborough. We've gotten at the community house, we have a Centennial. The Historic Commission should be celebrating the National Register Historic District, which became official sometime in December or January. And if there's anything there that we can coordinate on, we'd be very interested in. And since we're kind of trailblazing a little bit of this Centennial, the town of Southborough itself will have its tricentennial in just 5 more years. So we're hoping to coordinate with the town government and the town manager and the town planners to see if we can leverage some of the things they're doing, as well as blaze a trail or two in what we're trying to do. So we'd like to really leverage and coordinate with any other related activities. So I'm going to sit through the rest of your meeting and listen to what your goals are on the National Register, Historic District signage, etc. So I'll attend. I won't drop right off. I'll hang on for a while.
Okay, Ray, did you want to touch on there were a couple other slides in there. I don't know if.
Yeah, I'm gonna really quickly just breeze through those to just sort of.
Oh yeah, you've got here.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm not ending.
Okay.
There's sort of where the antiques would be. The antique cars would be in the back with the parking lot. The food truck would either be in the parking lot or maybe out on the Main Street driveway. The clip art there for a bowling alley is about where the bowling alley foundation sits back in the trees. It's quite hidden from the street view. You got to sort of walk back there to see it. And a picture of what we would intend to do something like that. Again, it's just clip art saying we're going to put some bricks around the existing flagpole with named bricks for donations. We may also have a plaque or something of everybody who donated to the Centennial. Next page, I think the next 2 pages just say, who was this guy Choate? So Charles Francis Choate Jr. And I also wanted to point out somewhere along the line that the Choates, the Burnetts, and the Sears are all sort of interconnected and intermarried and interesting sort of combination of what happens there at the turn of the century in Southborough. But Charles Choate Jr. founded a law firm in Boston called Choate Hall and Stewart, LLP, founded in 1899. And according to the web, the law firm is still in operation. And it seems to function both as a law firm, but also as legally providing information for investment brokers, etc. And that is his picture. It's about the only picture I can find of Charles Choate Jr. Next slide. Here's where you see why he quickly donated the community houses. He lived kind of a little bit nearby in a much grander home. So when he probably bought it from his lawyer friend and immediately had it in his plan to donate it to the people of Southborough. So the Charles Francis Choate House, Charles Francis Choate Jr. House, is the big house that most people can't see from Main Street, but it's tucked back there at 43 Main Street. You can catch a glimpse probably of the portico every once in a while if the trees don't have leaves on them. And it's a St. Mark's property. Other people in there was his father, Choate, his spouse. There's where you see that he married a Burnett. So Louise Burnett Choate was his spouse. And his sister, Sarah Carlisle Choate Sears, married a Sears. So this is where the Choates, the Burnetts, and the Sears is all sort of intermingle and intermarry. And they're all part of the, what we probably called the Boston Brahmin elite. And in a strange way, they were Boston-based lawyers and businessmen. But it seemed that Southborough was a rural retreat to them, call it a mini Newport of the rich and famous of Boston. And they seem to have found Southborough as a place to hang out. The little comment down at the bottom, the text is from the Boston Herald. That is actually Choate's obituary. He seemed to have died in court while working in court on December 1927. He was struck down by a heart attack. And he was very involved in, he prepared for college at St. Mark's. So he went to St. Mark's School, graduated from Harvard, and he was very much like his father as well. He was involved in railroad law. And the last picture, the only other picture I thought I'd include was this is his sister. And this is the bon vivant view of the world of Southborough, and that not many people get their picture painted by John Singer Sargent. That particular picture is in Museum of Fine Arts in Houston. And she was one of those rich and famous people who had lots of money and probably traveled the world. And she actually studied to be an artist. And one of her paintings is in the collection of the Gardner Museum. So I just wanted to add the sort of the Southborough's aristocracy, if you wish, a little picture of who they were at the turn of the century. And obviously the Choates and the Sears and the Burnetts have a lot. And actually, I think the people, the two Choate descendants, they're connected into the Burnetts too, somewhere along the line. So the ones that we definitely have coming for Heritage Day. That's pretty much what I wanted to talk about. This is what we're doing. We're very interested in piggybacking on any other actions by any other historical or government group in town. But that's a little idea of what we're trying to do for Heritage Day. Do we have, anybody have questions or anything? No.
I don't, but I thought that was great, Ray. I really appreciate it. I mean, it's very interesting to me, and it's such a beautiful building. And very, by the way, the society does a wonderful job maintaining it. You know, it's always, it looks tip top.
It's probably been a task, particularly over the past 10 or 15 years, with new roof, new decking on the wraparound porch, The shingles were all redone. Actually, the shingles were redone just about the time we said, oh, we should have insulated. And so we've been sort of prevented for doing additional insulation because we can't blow it in from the outside because we destroy all the new shingles. It was always a climate issue. So we've put a couple of the splits, the heating cooling ducts that allow for some air conditioning in that building. So we've done that. And then we did a big conversion from oil to gas and saved ourselves a lot of money with a high efficiency furnace. So there's, like I said, probably the past 10, 12 years, it's been a lot of maintenance of the building. And now it's sort of, okay, let's get more into the post-COVID. Let's get the building back in action and being used for community events.
Right, and this would all again be on Town Day where you have the food truck and the reenactors and.
Yeah, we're piggybacking on it because we know that lots of people come into town for the heritage to see the parade, to see the various booths that are set up across the street on the St. Mark's Field. And we're just trying to leverage that and try to draw some of the people over to see more about the building and learn more about the building.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds fantastic. You should get a big crowd because there are a lot of people there.
We hope so. I hope so.
Great. Well, and anybody else have anything ask, say? Well, no? Good. All right, Ray, thank you so much for stopping by and for the presentation.
Like I said, I'll listen in for a little bit. I certainly want to hear about your signage for the historic district.
Okay, that's upcoming.
Because at least in addition to the community house, there's my house, there's Doc Donahue's house, Philip's house. A lot of people are in the neighborhood and interested about it too. Thank you.
Great. All right. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you. Thanks, Ray.
And do I mute myself or do you mute me?
I will take you out.
Okay.
There you go. All right. I really appreciate that. Let us move on. It's really a packed agenda, actually. The next item we've got here is a discussion of the fencing at the Burnett Mansion. That's 84 Main, Burnett Garfield House, now Deerfoot Estates. And just to quickly recap, you recall that this was an issue that was brought to my attention that came up, I believe it was my Southborough piece. I forget how it got going, but there were inquiries made, and this all happened like the day or two after I posted the agenda for the last meeting, right before the meeting. And, I was asked to comment, make a remark. And so I sort of went over there, took a look around, took some measurements, reviewed the preservation restriction, which I want to talk about a little bit tonight, and gave a kind of preliminary view. But at our wonderful vice chair's suggestion, was to come back and give everybody a chance to offer an opinion on this, having looked at it yourselves. And having reviewed the preservation restriction, which of course sent out with the meeting packet. And let's talk about it because it's actually a big and it really is a huge and important issue, right? The town spent $970,000 of CPA funds, for this agreement, which was executed in August of 2016 was when it was all signed and sealed and stamped and entered, into formally. So that people in town are, right to be interested, and we have a duty to review. And I will say that, I came on the Historical Commission only last June. Ended up as chair in March or something. And so, this is all quite new to me. And there's a little bit of going to be a running theme, I think, tonight. And my interest in the way I want to get us on a path, I think, to what I hope will be I don't know, a more clear-cut sense of organization. And this is sort of a spur because, just a little backstory that when this came up, right, I had never seen the preservation restriction. I was new to the commission. I'd never read it. I knew it was in place, but we hadn't, of course, discussed it at all in roughly the year I'd been on. And so we weren't reviewing it regularly. And so I was really dropped into a position of having to scramble, right? And, one of the things that came out of it was when I had to go looking for this thing dug around in the town website and ended up with a copy of it, which turned out to be only a draft and very similar to the final notarized and signed document, but nonetheless a little bit different. And finally, I think through the chair of the select board and the town manager got me the proper fully executed copy. And this goes to the next agenda item about record keeping and document storage, which I earnestly want to review. But, so I got the thing, read it, gave a sort of preliminary view of it that I thought that the fence was really not in violation. But so there's that. But one thing that came out of this is that document, which I think got sent as well to Beth Malo at mysouthborough.com. She's done an article on it, which I'm quoted in a kind of amusing way. Fine. But she has a link to the document, which she uploaded, which is the correct document. So I congratulate her on that and having it. But it should be on our, the Town of Southborough Historical Commission webpage. It should be a click away from anybody, and it's not. So we got to fix that like right away. And so it's part of a whole process of things that have come to my attention in some ways related to this and things that were already on my radar. But, I want that to be easily publicly accessible, because one of the things that you find if you follow any of the town, I'm on Southborough Cares and Shares and some of the other, like Facebook pages. There's a lot of misinformation out there where people just don't understand it. And it would be nice, and Beth Malo has done a service by posting a link to the document. It would be nice if you could say to people, well, go to our webpage and click on it and read it for yourself. And then you understand that you don't get to, dictate the guy's aesthetic choices, for instance. But there are items that merit review, and that, in fact, we are obliged to review periodically, which is something I want to get to in this conversation. So I really want to hear from everybody here, but I will say a couple other things. Is that the material comments in the preservation restriction document appear, in my view, first on page 9, where the wording is, no perimeter fencing or tall hedges shall be placed on the property blocking the view. Okay. Now, with regard to the fencing that Mr. Deli Priscoli has installed currently along Main Street, and I understand it's going to come down Deerfoot and I believe Parkerville as well, atop the stone or the stone fence. Again, I said this the last time, but I went out there and I measured this stuff. The wall ranges, let's say, along Main Street from 11 to 15 inches high. It adjusts with the curvature of the ground or the regularity of the landscape. And then the wrought iron fencing that is atop it is roughly 46 inches and adjusts down again to give a total height of 57 inches, right? So that is 4 feet 9. Most people can see right over it, in other words. But the pickets themselves are 1/2-inch pickets. They're spaced 6 inches on center. So every 6 inches, there's a 1/2 inch taken up by a picket, meaning that 91.67% of the area is utterly unobstructed. And actually, Beth Malo, my supper, has a picture of it. It's part of this article, and it makes it very plain that you can see, nothing is obstructed by this fence. I was quoted as being, not quoted, but characterized as being, I believe, clearly enamored of the fence. And for the record, I will say my enthusiasms are broad and may to some seem peculiar, but the list does not extend to wrought iron fences. So I wouldn't say that I was enamored of the fence. In my view, for what it's worth, which is not much, it's consistent with the gate, which is, black wrought iron, and it's got the, you've all seen it now. The fence is black. It's got these sort of gold tips, and you hear people talk. I mean, listen, there's room. Everyone's got their opinion on like aesthetic questions, right? I can tell you that there's some minor divergence of opinion, even within my own household on the fence. I happen to like it. I don't know if I'm enamored, but I like it. I think it's very nice. I think it's consistent with the gate. But the issue is, under our purview, is not anybody's aesthetic judgment. The issue is it allowable? A couple of things I said before, and I do want to say again. You can see over it, you can see through it. It is also, in my view, and I think in Mr. Deli Criscoli's view, a matter of safety. As you know, if you've been over there, the fence being the stone wall, I should say, being very low, right? You can step up on that. And then the drop down actually onto the property is of several feet, 4 feet in some places, or more. And it's actually, I think, a very easy argument to make that it is a safety concern of, not people jumping up there and sort of falling in. And so, yes, I find it attractive. I find it consistent with the gates. I find it a safety improvement. Now, I have heard, I will say, some talk about, as you come up Parkerville, people trying to make a left onto Main Street have, again, this comes up in the social media sphere, complaining about the sight lines for a left-hand turn, like you're seeing traffic coming that would be eastbound on Main Street from that intersection. That, of course, is a concern for the DPW. It's not a concern of the Historical Commission. You can search high and low in the preservation restriction document and not find any language tasking us with making judgments on sight lines at intersections. So that's, to me, out of the question. The issue is, does it block the view of the property? So it's page 9. Page 15, there's also language that talks about compliance, quote, includes but is not limited to pruning and maintenance required to maintain the viewscapes to the buildings of historical significance from Parkerville Road, Deerfoot, and Main Street. There, I think we need to have a conversation, and I'll explain why. And then finally, it's in, I believe, Exhibit F. This is on page 100 of that document, where it talks about, it differentiates between major and minor changes or alterations. Minor ones being those that do not require historical commission oversight or review, and major ones that do. And under landscape and outbuildings, major would be moving or subdividing, building or property, altering or removing significant landscape features such as gardens, vistas, walks, plantings, walls, fences, ground disturbance affecting archaeological resources. Now note the language there says altering or removing. The case of this fence, in my judgment, it's not an alteration, it's not a removal, it's an addition. I would venture to say, and this is where the document, I wish I had had a hand in the writing of this document, but I did not. What I'm tasked with trying to interpret it, and the way I interpret it is that the addition of a fence is not an alteration of it or a removal. Now, I will say, if you really wanted to get picky, they had to drill little 1-inch or their little holes every 6 feet to anchor the thing into the stone wall. That's how it's, cemented in. It's done very well. It was done very tastefully. I don't imagine anybody having a kerfuffle over that. So at that point, that's where I would like to sort of get your views on this. I probably said too much already, but again, my reading of the document is that the fencing does not obstruct. There's some, I think I would like to have at some point in this conversation, some conversation about some of the hedge plantings along Deerfoot Road, because those have been brought up to me. And I think it merits a conversation, but so feel free, let's go around. I'll just ask you all to what your views are, both about the fence, and if you have additional concerns, by all means, let's hear them. Jim, do you have thoughts on this you'd like to start us off?
Sure, I do. I think it's a beautiful fence. I think John has spent, I don't know what the number is, probably 5x what the amount of town money that went into the property. I'm sure we know what that is, but it's a huge amount of personal investment. He is relentless in his penchant for quality and recreating the original look and character of the building, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think he's put a beautiful fence up and a beautiful gate. Yes, it's ornate, but the Burnett's were a prominent family. So I see it as a very nice addition to the property. It's hard to imagine any street corner where you occasionally don't have to pull up a little bit to see past something, but I don't think it's a danger to anything. And it certainly doesn't obstruct the view. So I'm all for it. I don't see any reason to stand in the way of it continuing. And the fact that if it does wrap around the corner, as you say, it's 90 whatever percent transparent. So I don't see an issue with this. And I think it's a beautiful addition to, the restoration work that he's done painstakingly.
Kate?
I agree with both of you, actually. I think, Kevin, I appreciate how you said the aesthetics aren't under the purview of the Historical Commission. I also actually think it's a lovely fence. I think it goes with the gates. And I do understand that not everybody is a fan of the gates, but I think we would be hard pressed based on the reading of the preservation restriction, because I don't see it as obstructing. Perhaps it's something that going forward, we have discussions with Mr. Deli Pascoli about keeping the rose bushes along there trimmed, that kind of thing, to prevent them from getting so big that they do obstruct the view. And I think the one thing that I think would be really beneficial is to, ask John to meet with us, to discuss with us ahead of some of these projects when he has these kinds of plans, because then we'd be able to provide some feedback. That's it. Thank you.
Annie?
Yeah, so I also think it's quite a lovely fence. I do not personally feel that it is obstructing the view or the vista of the home in any way. And I also agree that while I understand some folks in town don't like the way it looks, that's not under our purview. And if anything, I do think the gates are a little bold, but for me, in a way, the fence kind of helps make it look more cohesive, and kind of just, I think it adds a really nice element to make the entire property enhance the look of the property, even though I know some folks in town don't agree. I would say, in reading through the preservation restriction, more so than the fence, I'm actually worried about those tall arborvitaes along the corner of Deerfoot as blocking, more of the view than the fence, certainly. And I think Kate brings up a good point that, the roses, if not pruned pretty well, every year or every season, have potential to grow to a point where that could block the view as well. So I personally don't have any concern on the fencing. You bring up a great point about the safety that I hadn't thought of before tonight. And kind of just the last comment I'll make is, so I joined the commission in 2020, and I actually moved to Southborough. And after this, the CPA was, awarded money for this project. And I really didn't understand the scope of, our commission's, involvement or purview or responsibility with overseeing the preservation restriction. I think I knew it happened, but we had never really talked about it as a commission. So, I just didn't understand. And I'm so glad that we're having this exercise of, reading through the whole preservation restriction. And I think getting this information out on, whether it's the Historical Commission's website, Beth has put it out on my Southborough. I think ongoing education, not only internally, but externally, with residents will be really, really important for our, public relations going forward.
Yeah, it's funny, with regard to this sort of contingent that doesn't like the gates. I mean, I think your point about the installation of the fence, in my mind, makes the gates make sense.
Exactly.
In
Yeah.
a way that they,
I agree.
arguably didn't before. Now it's all knitted together. When it comes around, along Deerfoot, to the other gate, I mean, I think it helps the whole property sort of cohere and make a sort of consistent kind of vision. So I don't know, maybe I am enamored. I like the fence. I think it looks very nice and sort of pulls the whole thing together. Grant, what do you think?
Yeah, sure. So I have a few thoughts. I'm not going to, I guess, comment on my opinions on the aesthetic value of the gate, or of the gate and the fence, just because I don't think that's really what we're here to do tonight. I would say that I think that I guess I'll start by saying that the hedges on or is it Arborvitae, the row of them planted on the Deerfoot side of the property, I think are in violation of the preservation restriction. They, have filled in quite a lot over the last, I don't know how many years since they've been planted, at least a few. And now it's pretty much a complete, green wall that you can't, when you're there, you can't actually see the property. So I do think that is out of compliance. One thing that I had looked at when reading the preservation restriction, again, I am new to this as well, as Annie mentioned. I was in town, but I was I I think perhaps away at college or something when all this was going on. So this is pretty new to me as well. So on page from page 9 to 11 under point 3 of the preservation restriction, which is where this is mainly discussed, there's discussion of the development of a landscape master plan. Just paraphrasing, essentially it says that the Historical Commission had to have approved a landscape master plan related to groundskeeping, placement of pavement, tree location, all sorts of things related to the landscaping and just general layout of the property. And so prior to any work being done, the Historical Commission had to have approved that. So where I think it gets a bit interesting is that it does say, and I believe it's on page 11, I could be wrong about that, maybe it's page 10, that if any work is done, significant work is done outside of that landscape master plan, then that would need to, it shall require review and written approval of the commission prior to the work being done. I believe that's on page 11. So I do think, I haven't been able to find the landscape master plan from that time period. To be honest, I'm not sure where to look, but I think that could perhaps provide clarity in seeing whether or not this was actually part of the plan originally, whether or not it was approved by the commission. And if it wasn't, then my reading of this is that it would have required prior written consent by and a vote by the historical commission before being put up, which I think is
on which aspect, Grant? On which aspect?
The fence? The
fence itself. Yeah, well, two things. And first, can I address the, because I've been looking at are they arborvitae? I mean, there's some very fast growing.
They're green giant arborvitae.
Okay, good. Now, it's funny, I went and actually looked at the street view on Google, which has it still 2019. So it looks like shortly after they were planted, and they're really tiny. These are like, anybody wants screening.
I have some, yeah, they grow really fast.
Wow. I mean, because when they were put in, they're about maybe waist high. Like that's how it shows in the Google Street View. And so in just 3 years, they filled in and taken off. And I do agree with Grant that they're quite large, and you have to kind of like, you see the house sort of up over, but I think there's a conversation to be had. And what I would suggest on that particular point is that I mean, I've been on the commission about a year. I'd met Mr. Deli Priscoli once under other auspices, and found him a very pleasant guy to talk to. And I understand that he's appeared before the Historical Commission before and been great and explained stuff. And so I want to invite him back. It's been a while. And maybe in September, if he's free, if not October or something, and to have him come by and, to have a nice conversation about how's it working out. I mean, I know that, this has been, I think Jim is correct in saying, he's just done an unbelievable job and spent just oodles and oodles of money trying to do this right, and I think, under difficult circumstances, because everybody knows, COVID and supply chain issues and all that kind of stuff has slowed the work, I think, to a slower pace than he certainly would have liked. I think he would be much further along for not some of the problems of getting materials, apparently. But I think it would be appropriate to have him in and talk to him. And one of the things that we can ask him about is, what is the plan for controlling those arborvitaes and keeping them at a reasonable I mean, I don't know, Grant, if you feel that they ought to be removed or trimmed. I mean, I share the concern, and I saw it, and this came I've had a couple of private citizens in town sort of bring this to my say, and I said, yeah, I see what you're talking about, and let's ask him about it and what the plans are, I think. And with regard to the landscape master plan, I haven't seen it. Kate, Jim, I mean, you were around it. Have you reviewed this? We need to, I need to put my hands on it. So I'd like to, be able to review this in full. I mean, I know there've been conversations with other, I think open space and conservation have both been involved in this conversation.
It was prior me, and it was definitely if it was prior me, it was prior Jim too. So
yeah, there's a hand up. I think this might be.
It's Jim. Actually, I think it was Jim. Oh, sorry.
Oh, let me add, because he would know. So, Michael, MDW, would that be you, Mr. Whiteson?
That would be me.
What can you tell us?
Good evening, everyone. Hello, nice to see you again. Miss you guys. So again, this was from the very beginning of my second stay. I helped negotiate the preservation restriction, and I will tell you that the fence part about it is pretty moot. Really, what we were concerned about at the time were large perimeter fencing that had to do with, I don't know, large stockade fences or something that would block the view of the perimeter. We knew from the very beginning that there was this iron fence going in. I don't know necessarily that we knew about the extensions of it along the way, but I can guarantee you that in the spirit of this agreement, those pieces of fencing that are now there don't violate what we had intended. So that's the first part. As to the Arborvitae, I really don't know, but I have talked to John about this, and seemingly he had a discussion with our former chair, Joe Hubley, and this was approved. So, I think a search back into the records would be advisable before we march too terribly down the line about this. There were some issues of traffics and lights, and I'm not quite sure exactly what, because again, I believe actually I was off the commission. I forget exactly when this all occurred, but the fact of the matter is that by and large, the guys stayed pretty much within the bounds of this thing, and I do applaud having John back and try to discuss some of these issues. But I would also go back and try to see what the discussion was, in particular, if you're going to have some issues about the plantings along, I guess that would be Deerfoot Road, that you look back and see what was agreed to, because again, I don't fully remember and I wasn't there at the time.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I mean, I think that goes to my sort of point about what I'd like to do as a commission is to sort of get on a path toward memorializing this stuff so that we can track it. And what I would suggest that we do going forward is try to plan on an annual review of the full provisions and possibly an annual review with Mr. Deli Priscoli if he's amenable.
Well, yeah. Kevin, hopefully this thing should be done within a year or two, and there shouldn't be a need for annual reviews. I mean, essentially the planting is in place. I walked the property with John and Joe Hubley, the then chair, and we set the parameters for the current plantings. That plan does exist somewhere because it was submitted to the commission and we approved it at the time, and they have adhered to it pretty closely. There's been some changes due to conservation commission restrictions. They've insisted on plantings in various areas and drawbacks of plantings and stuff. And you can follow that discussion via the Conservation Commission. But by and large, this is what we talked about at our initial meeting: the gates, the fence, the walls, and very little else has gone on there other than the fact that the man has spent a gazillion billion dollars beyond which he was ever obligated to spend to create, to maintain a property or restore a property that would have been 3 or 4 modern homes. So I hope that folks, when they look at this, I agree, I don't appreciate all the aesthetics, but the fact of the matter is he did what he said he was going to do and restored that mansion, and we have it to enjoy.
Yeah, great. All right. Well, thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. And yeah, I mean, I again, Commission, I think our best path forward here is to invite, Mr. Deli Priscoli to a meeting and just, discuss where we're at and check in. And I think it'd be nice for him to sort of get to know a little better some of the new folks on the commission. We can address just the issue of, or among the issues, the question of the trimming schedule and what the plans are. I think one thing people don't maybe understand all that well is, for instance, he's planted this lovely grand sort of alley of trees, coming up the main drive. And, over the years, those are going to fill in. I mean, you know what I mean? That the plantings, I know a lot of the trees were diseased and damaged or at the end of their lives and were removed. And he's put in, all these new specimen plantings. And as they mature, I mean, the landscape is going to fill in and change, and inevitably things will become, it's not a sheep grazing meadow in front of the house. You know what I mean? It's all planted up, and that stuff is going to fill in. And so people have to be prepared for that. I think one of the sort of shocks to folks is those what are they, green giant arborvitae? They're, man, oh man, honest to God, in 3 years, they've gone from, like I said, about, I don't know, maybe 3 feet tall to about, what would you say, Grant? 15? They're pretty big.
Is it that high? I can't.
They're pretty big. They're pretty big.
Yeah.
So,
Again, Kevin, I just would look back in the records because I do believe that this was granted.
yeah, well, we will, and I'm sure Mr. Deli Priscoli will be only too glad to point it out to us if it was agreed to.
Oh, I'm sure he will.
Yeah.
But, as people should know, I mean, so you're now seeing a house which is essentially a construction site. The paving's about to be done. It'll soon turn to gravel, and all these additional plantings, all the ornamental plantings around the house, all this stuff is still to come. So it's very much a work in progress. Right. So I would hope that people would hold their fire a bit about this and to try to understand that this is going to be an incredible asset for Southborough. I mean, the fact that the house is still there is almost a miracle. So to the degree I can help you guys, my memory of this is, lagging, because again, where were we? I think 2000, oh God, 4, 5, 6. I don't know. Where were we when we started this? Does anyone remember? No. Kate's saying no. When were the girls out there protesting?
I don't know. I've been on this for 6 years and it was prior to me. So I want to say that was like 2013 or 14, maybe, when I don't know.
Oh, it was earlier than that because I was brought back because of this, along with Rebecca. And I think we served 3 terms. So that would be 18 years. I don't know. Anyway, it's been a long, long time.
Yeah.
So in any event, so I will be happy to help you guys to the degree I can. But let's get the facts straight before we march forward.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Michael.
All right. Thank you. And good night.
Thanks. Yeah, again, just gonna, there we go. I think conversation with Mr. Deli Priscoli is definitely warranted and called for, and would be productive and healthy, and get him to know us a little bit better, and we him. And I do think the question of the arborvitae along Deerfoot needs to be investigated, and if there was some sort of agreement, I hope it's memorialized in writing, because people, again, have a legitimate right, and we have a legitimate responsibility to enforce the terms of the agreement as written, unless there's sort of some variance that's been granted. How that gets accomplished, is subject to discussion, and good faith. I mean, my understanding, he's been a very good partner thus far, and I have no reason to doubt that he will continue to be. And we would like to do likewise. And Michael's point about making sure that we have everything, that we understand fully what the circumstances are, well taken. I have no intention of doing otherwise. So are we in a pretty good place with this? Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention, by the way, is that there's a provision. There are two provisions in here. On page 25, there's an inspection provision. In this document, we are the grantee, as it's written, and Mr. Deli Priscoli, they, it's sort of, and immediate family are the grantor. But that the grantee does have a right to sort of inspect periodically, again, subject to good faith negotiation, to make sure that the restriction is being adhered to. And so we'll pursue that. The other thing that I'm very interested in actually is there's a provision on page 13 that the current grantor shall consider and do their best to accommodate 2 educational tours of the grounds each calendar year for Southborough students in the accompaniment of teachers, proctors, or adult volunteers. All such visits shall be at the current grantor's discretion. And again, we've been in, pandemic times, but hopefully as we ease out of this, and of course it's still an active construction site, but that I look forward to the day, hopefully fairly soon, when health concerns and the status of the construction will allow for those tours. And I would imagine that Mr. Deli Priscoli would be very excited and happy to show off the fruits of his long labors and share that with some of the students in town. So we have things to talk about with him. And so let's try to do that. With your good graces, I will try to reach out to him and possibly get him in here in September. Does that sound like good? Is there anything that I didn't feel that we need to take a vote on anything unless there's an impulse to do so. I'm certainly entertain that. I don't see it.
I think it's just will be beneficial to see if Mr. Deli Priscoli wants to attend one of our meetings and explain his, tell us a little bit more about his progress. And then it just gives us an opportunity to be able to answer questions if people from the public have questions going forward.
Right. I really think it's kind of good, PR, and keep some of the weird chatter that sometimes goes on in the fringes sort of, so people understand. So for instance, Michael made reference to this. My understanding is that he's going to be shortly putting in a drive, and that's specified, by the way, in the preservation restriction, repaving. But what he's going to do is this wonderful process where it's basically embedded like pea stone it's a sort of asphalt. It's like having a gravel driveway, but it's adhered to the like an underlying sort of tar, so the gravel doesn't move all over the place, basically. And my understanding of that process is that it will look ugly for about a month because they have to put apparently the tar, it's like an asphalt surface down first and let it sit there and bake for a while. And then they go back with the stone over top of it and embed it. You follow? So everybody prepare, for it to look like a lot of asphalt for a while, but then it's going to look like this beautiful, sort of pea stone, much more natural kind of driveway when that process is done. I think I've given to understand it's about a month or so. So great. I will just keep moving on then. Related to this, as I said, to me is item 4 here is the Historical Commission record keeping and document storage. And actually, Michael is, we can reach out to him. He's been very generous about many things, time and expertise. I will say that, this came up with the preservation restriction. I need to get this master landscape document. Part of our issue right now is apparently what files the Historical Commission has. There's been, and this runs through a lot of different boards and committees. I think that there's a problem with record keeping and storage, even town-wide. I mean, I know as you know, of course, the society, flooded at one point, and it was serious loss of damage and documents. And Michael has explained to me carrying boxes out, and drying things out and all that just disastrous flood that happened. I believe that was 2016. 2015. Remember that winter we had like 1 million feet of snow, and apparently it was piled up at the side of the building and melted and flooded. I'm sure you guys, some of you know about this, right? Yeah. Okay. That floods in the townhouse in the basement, apparently, which is kind of a chamber of horrors. It's like out of a Vincent Price movie, as I understand it, and things have been lost there. And we do not have in the townhouse any place to store anything. And so all of what we have is apparently in a couple of file drawers in the flag school, in other words, in the Historical Society's offices. And, I happen not to have a key to the flag school. I don't have immediate access to those documents. I'm sure Michael will be happy to turn them over. I don't have any place to put them. I actually brought this up in a conversation with Kathy Cook, our select board chair. And I said, can I please have a file cabinet in the townhouse? Because I think town documents should be in a town building, right? In a publicly accessible, obviously not everybody can just come in and rifle around the file drawers, but I would like to have a locked file cabinet. I mean, I could put the stuff in this is my office, at home, but that's not where it belongs, right? And I think, in terms of continuity for the Historical Commission, I will not be chair forever, that whoever comes after me has to have like a clear access to documents and know how they're organized. And I would like to sort of make it a little bit of a project for us to get our act together in terms of, record keeping and have it organized. And I'd even like to have some little sort of guidance about how things have been conducted. Now, of course, the online stuff, the minutes are fairly easy to get, but I have to say, when I go looking for back information, I most often get led again to my Southborough because, Beth does a pretty good job covering what's going on. And that's how I find out about stuff, because I'm still learning how things work in this town and what has happened in the past and what's going on. And so, one thing that, and, this is all in flux too, right? Because the Historical Society has announced, and I know, Jim, you're still on the board, right, of the society. You've announced the sale of the declaration, the raising of this great deal of money, the intention to relocate to the Fayetteville Hall, all, wonderful. So it's in flux. I'm sure, Michael is not going to want to carry the historical commission's files over to Fayetteville Hall. So, we need to make arrangements to sort of get that stuff. And I need to just go through it very carefully, and hopefully with the assistance of one or more of you folks, and get it really well organized and see what we've got and what we don't have. My understanding, unfortunately, is that a lot of stuff has vanished into the ether, which is not great. So I don't know, Jim, I mean, actually, would you, be willing to sort of help? I mean, you're a good person because to maybe be a liaison for this. And, I can talk to Michael anytime. I mean, he's, about just getting this stuff and what we're going to do about it. I mean, do you guys have any suggestions about what? And I will say that I've heard conversation already that if everything follows according to what apparently the plan is, and the society ends up at the Fayetteville Hall and the flag school becomes open. I've heard some talk about, we may get some space in there, meaning the commission, small sort of office, kind of a cube. I would settle for, you know what I mean? I think it would be really great. I know there are other boards and commissions that would have similar feelings, that would like to have, you know what I mean? A little cube, a little desk, and a file cabinet. So they could do, because I know we're not alone in this. I've heard from the chair of another town board lamenting a similar problem about keeping your records and having a place, and they should not be in people's homes except, on a temporary basis. So I'd really like to work on that, and I will appeal. Right now, when the clouds clear a little bit and the plans are actually more certain, I will appeal for, a little cubicle of our own, so that we could maybe go and do some work there, or have a place where we could access records that we need to look at. And, more than one person should have the key to it. It's not just the chair, this is why, Kate and I both got trained on that open gov stuff, so we could work with the building commissioner. And, I wasn't going to do it by myself, because, you know what I mean? Something happens, now Kate knows what to do. And we need to work on that, because I really, the whole the way the transition to me being chair, was very sudden and unexpected. So it was an unusual circumstance. But I mean, I'm learning like all the time with this, and it's not easy. So I'd like to make it so that future chairs had an easier time coming in. I get hit by this.
Be that liaison, although don't hesitate to reach out entirely. I think there's a fair amount of synergy between historical commission and society. I don't know about the other town boards necessarily having dibs on extra space, and we haven't talked about it at the society. But I would think there's a good case to be made for us being able to park there, as long as it doesn't set some kind of precedent that becomes unmanageable.
Yeah, I would just, like I said, even on a temporary basis, I mean, I think the function, I don't know how long, if the move is made, and I have no idea how long that's going to take, but what the issue with the Burnett mansion has sort of brought home to me is I can't wait anymore to try to get my hands on what I need to get my hands on to be able to function. So yeah, let's talk, Jim, and we'll talk to Michael and, get the stuff. And maybe on some temporary basis, I can manage to convince somebody at the townhouse to share a file. I mean, I know they got space crunch too, everybody's a little cramped, but we'll figure it out. Anybody have any thoughts on this? Or think I'm crazy?
No, I think it's very important to have access to these records, and I think any attempts to increase both the accessibility for the commission and potentially public accessibility for previous.
Well, yeah, great. That's the other part of it is I would like to do, and I'd already inquired about this, that, our webpage on the town site has not been updated in a long time. And there's certain documents that I would like to have there, not least the preservation restriction and some other items. And even to be able to make periodic announcements. I had inquired about if I could have administrative privileges for that page, and apparently I can't. You have to prepare the document and then sort of submit it, and somebody over there at the townhouse will sort of upload it or enter it, which is fine. But we need to sort of, come up a plan. Maybe if you're willing to kind of work on that end of it, the sort of electronic and getting stuff uploaded, and you can do a review. What do you think needs to be there? And then let's talk about it, and let's get those documents and let's get them uploaded. And let's make it a plan. Like, I would love if the rest of you are okay with it, to have Grant be sort of our, you know what I mean? Like our tech liaison, the person charged with getting the stuff up there. Is that okay with everybody? Good. Well, you're elected.
There it is.
I'm gonna make an executive decision, and we're gonna make you do some stuff that way. It would really help. And again, I want to be out there and transparent and open. Let's keep going. Actually, somewhat related to this is some Southborough Historical Commission letterhead, logo, visibility stuff, and Annie Pfaff has done a wonderful job. I'll say that right up front. Went back, you remember we reviewed, she had prepared all these different versions, and we sort of narrowed it down, and we said we'd like one with a kind of logo, and then I think at Jim's suggestion, very solid, one without graphic, so that you could sort of, where you needed to occupy less space, like at the top or bottom of a letterhead, that you could have it. And so let me share screen again and bring this up. Hang on, that's not what we want. Uh-oh. Oh my God. That's not it either. Wait, there we go. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Okay, so this is, and Annie, please jump in and explain. I mean, I think what you had done is sort of tweak some of the spacing and the kind of layout of these fonts, right?
Yep. So can you hear me, or am I frozen?
No, we hear you.
Oh, you hear me? Okay. Looks frozen on my screen. So what I think the feedback was from our last meeting was that what you're seeing on the screen was kind of the consensus of the logo people liked, but the feedback was to kind of give some more breathing room between the text and the outline of the shape of the town. So I kind of just shrunk the text in the middle to kind of make it just the layout a little bit more, just give it a little bit more room. And then the other feedback was that, the text as you see it right here, we may have applications for a logo that's just that text without the outline. So for example, at the top of a letterhead, yes, that one. So I kind of prepared a second version without the outline. They can kind of be used interchangeably depending on the application. Maybe if we're doing a presentation, the full logo with the outline could go in the corner, or, on a letterhead, we would just use the text or something like that. So I'm happy to kind of put some designs together for those physical pieces, but first wanted to, kind of close the loop on the logo design, and see if you had any more feedback on those items.
I love them. Can I just say that? I love them both. I for some reason, I especially love this one with the outline. I think you really improved the balance of it quite a bit. And I'm very happy with this, non-outline one as well. What do the rest of y'all think?
I think they look great. Really nice.
Thank you.
I think they're perfect.
Jim, are you, I know you go off camera, but I think you're still in. There you go.
No, I'm here. I just need to stretch this knee
Sure.
regularly. I think there's nice balance. I think the middle word is large for my taste, but if everybody else likes it, I'm okay with it.
Is it
Sorry,
about the
what word is big? Historical?
historical?
Compared to the other two.
Okay.
It's
Personally,
it's more they're nicely done. I think it comes across, and this is just a layman's swag on this. It comes across more like a historical society logo than a commission logo. If you know what I mean. The commission being the business side of the house versus the promotional side. So that's the only reason why I react the way I do to it when it has a big emphasis on historical. It seems a bit more PR rather than letterhead say. But I'm fine with it if everybody else is happy with it. It's just my observations.
I mean, I do. I see your point. I don't know, Andy. Do you think if I notice it more, especially in the non-outline one, is it possible to size down historical just slightly, but still have it fit? Because I know, like, from the top of the H to the L, like that's where Southborough sort of ducks into it. So I don't know how much you could, if it's possible to bring it down without kind of throwing the whole thing off.
Yes, I can try.
Okay.
Actually, I might even be able to do it while we're still talking before the end of the meeting, and maybe just send a link or something.
Okay. Yeah, we'll circle back. I mean, I think in principle, it's to me 99.9% of the way there, maybe. But yeah, if pursuant to Jim's suggestion, you could just try a little bit, kind of limit slightly. Yep. I think it might, for some reason, I don't like, it works especially well for me as is in the outline. I do understand the impulse. I don't know. Also, I think, Jim, that actually like printed on, let's say on letterhead, it's going to be much small. You know what I mean? It'll all end up being much smaller. But I understand what you're saying, like the balance between the name of the town and the historical is quite large. So yeah, if you're willing to give it a shot, I know you put, Annie, a ton of work into this, and I'm very grateful. I know everybody is. That would be super.
It's not that much work, I promise.
Okay, all right, fair enough. So we'll keep going then from that, and thank you so much. Next thing I had is, we're going to be able to dispatch with this very quickly. I will say, here's the story. It's on the agenda, so I have to, I'll touch on it, but very quickly. Apparently in 2018, again, before my time on the scene, the Historical Commission had no web presence because as I understand it, the town website was sort of a mess, a disaster, non-functional, what didn't exist. And so I didn't inquire into by what process it occurred, but Michael had apparently registered the domain southboroughhistoricalcommission.org with a company called Mac Highway in 2018. That was a 3-year registration. It cost them $106.20. In 2021, apparently it auto-renewed to 2024. And so a couple of weeks ago, he sent me these 2 invoices and said, can I get paid? And I said, I don't know. I turned, not to our new treasurer, Annie, but to Kate, who had been treasurer during that time, because I didn't want to throw that at Annie's feet. She didn't know anything about it. But I figured Kate would know and would be able to solve it. And Kate came back to me and said, well, I don't think we can pay these. In fact, I know we can't, because I know what the rules are, and the rules are, it has to come in the fiscal year that it was incurred, or as Kate, and jump in anytime you want, but that you have to file some form to say that the bill is coming, right? And so neither of those things happened, and I ended up having a conversation with our wonderful town clerk, who further clarified for me that to get these paid at this point, you'd have to go to town meeting.
Yeah.
And get at a special town meeting 90% of the hall to agree, and at a regular town meeting like 2/3 of the hall to agree with this. And so I finally just called up Michael and I explained the situation. I said, hey, this is a tough one, and he very graciously withdrew the request. And so he's just going to eat the $212.40. And I thank him for it. And the only other thing that maybe need be said here is this is a case of Michael thinking about in a sort of generous spirit of the historical commission and the town first, and his own wallet and finances second. I joked to him that, there's an app to cancel unwanted subscriptions. And his reply to me was, yeah, I should just read my damn credit card statements more closely instead of just paying them. And I would have caught this. So, but what he did ask me was whether we had any interest in the domain, because he could transfer it and it's paid for through 2024. And my initial impulse was, no, I'm not interested, because I'm going to put Grant Farrington onto fixing up our town website, which is where I think it belongs. And of course, now we have this wonderful, Jay Montijo and wonderful IT people, and there's a new hire I haven't met yet. And so it's all much better now, and I don't really see the need for it. But I open it to your comments or suggestions if you think you're interested in doing that. Personally, I'm not. That's my take.
I think it would convolute the issue a bit. I think for everybody to just have one place to go and having it be part of the town of Southborough website is probably the best, if we can get that updated.
And thanks to Grant, we will. Anybody else on this? Are you all okay with just sort of letting this go? And again, I thank Michael for withdrawing the request. I think it's tough. I mean, hard to be owed money by the town. Kind of.
Yeah, it is. Kevin, just to be clear, the domain that Michael reserved was intended to be used by the commission or the society?
By the commission. It's Southborough Historical Commission.org. I don't know if I misspoke earlier. I may have.
No, I may have missed that. So yeah, I would agree with Kate that that's the kind of thing that you should be able to drill down from the town website and get to all the commission board. Okay. It does not need to be independent. Ergo, I would suggest that Michael let it expire and ask for a refund for the unused portion of the year.
Right. I think that's what he's going to do. And he said to me he had trouble. I think Mac Highway was the same hosting thing that had lost some of his data or whatever it is. But again, so he's graciously withdrawn the request, and so we can just move on. And thanks for your indulgence. Discussion of the progress of the Southborough Center Historic District signage mock-ups review. This is very exciting because, again, I have Annie to thank for doing a lot of hard work here. And I'm going to try to bring these up. I'm all messed up now on the screen sharing. Okay. And I see those. Oh, I had them. Wait. I'm going to try that again. Oh, gosh. Screen share. It's right here. That's. There we go. Now, again, for this is, pursuant, of course, to our ARPA grant for historic signage. And I will say very quickly up front, discount the color. It looks a lot more sort of garish and gold than it will actually in real life. This is just their, what is it, Franklin Bronze, Annie? Yeah, that's the company, our preferred vendor, the Pennsylvania company. They did this sort of artwork kind of layout. And again, we have, money for the 7 signs for the points of entry in the district. They are to be pole mounted road signs. The poles will be the same color as the background of the sign, which is really nice. And one of the reasons that Annie and I were attracted to this particular vendor is because they give the complete package.
So just to actually, I wanted to clarify that, Kevin, sorry to interrupt. So they, if I recall correctly, they have black poles, and we had discussed whether we wanted to make the signs black to match the pole.
Right.
What you're seeing is called the dark outlet to match, but that's not reflected in the mock-ups here.
Right. This is like a bronze color, and we had been talking about that sort of black on. I'm going to bring up their website to show people what I think more like the color would look like. But suffice it to say, this is just a layout. And, we had discussed, that's the name of the district, the Southborough Center Historic District. Typically, these signs then say placed on the National Register of Historic Places. Many of them also say in sort of smaller print at the bottom by the U.S. Department of the Interior.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
And that's frequently on those signs. And, Annie and I, in discussing this, as we tried to work through this, we weren't fans of it. I particularly wasn't a fan of it because the feeling was, that you see that we went with a sort of US seal at the top of these. That's, often on these signs. It's partly because actually the town of Southborough's logo is not particularly fetching. And the feeling that we had this sort of national symbol, that we really need to have that rhetoric at the bottom about the US Department of the Interior. In fact, of course, the National Register program is administered by the National Park Service, which falls under the Department of the Interior. So if you really wanted to get technical, you could say placed on the National Register of Historic Places by National Park Service, part of the, or under the auspices of the US Department of Interior. You know what I mean? It just gets a lot of the extra verbiage, or let's say the absence of it in what we had actually spec'd, allows the everything to be larger. So again, remember, these are going to be road signs, and some of them, a couple of them are going to be, let's say, on 85, where people, blasting up and down 80 as they, let's say you come up, Corderville Road toward the center of town. This, one of these would be roughly by one of the tee boxes of the golf course, like that part of the road. So as you came up, it's about where you get to the old burial ground. That's where the district, not the old burial ground, I'm sorry, the rural cemetery. That's where the district begins in that location. So we'd have the sign obviously on the northbound side coming up. So in other words, you want it to be large enough that people can see it at a glance. It's not one of these things you're going to stop and read. So the impulse on our part was to minimize the wording so there'd be room for it to be big. Does that make sense? And these signs, by the way, are 24 by 30, which is generous. It's actually larger than what's often standard for these things. Right, Annie, that this would actually be a custom make for us. It doesn't really affect the pricing all that much, but I know that you would, as Annie, as you had gone through it, that typically these signs were a little bit smaller. For instance, we were looking at National Register signs in the town of Newburyport, and their signs are only 20 by 30, and these are 24 by 30. So these are slightly more generous than what many other places have, which to my mind is a good thing. So
Kevin, I was going to bring up a point. I think these three are so similar. It took me a minute to figure out where the differences are. It's really just,
yeah, it's a little bit of a tricky, like if you notice, Annie and I think had a preference for either A or C. I personally lean toward A. B, if you notice, you see how it splits it, like it's National Register of Historic Places, and then this B sign puts the of in the middle and kind of fattens that part of it out, which I didn't particularly find appealing. Also, the differences between A and C are fairly subtle. They have to do with, I think, correct me where I'm getting this wrong, Annie, the sort of spacing of the lettering, mostly in this bottom third of the sign. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I think the difference between A and C is that the letter or the word "the" is larger in A than it is in C.
Mhm.
And then the last three lines placed on the National Register of Historic Places, I believe that is smaller in A and larger in C. So my actual preference is a kind of a combination of A and C. So A as it is, but then just reducing the size of the word "the" at the beginning. If I had to, make a vote tonight, that's what I would probably go with.
I see. You guys, the rest of you all see that? I see that. And I completely agree with you. I like that. You see, Jim, look at this. The in the C version is much smaller than in A.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the Southborough. I like Southborough Center Historic District being larger than the.
yeah. And I was going to take it in a little different direction. Is that I like A and C better than the other, certainly because the Register of Historic Places together, and that we can fine tune the layout. The smaller the is better. But where I was going with it is, as for the color, and I don't know if it's something you want to get an opinion on tonight or not. I like the bronze look as opposed to black. I mean, it feels more historic. Point one, point two. Is there a reason? Is the language placed on the National Register of Historic Places the best way to convey what we hear or what we're trying to convey here? And is the third thing is there a date of incorporation that should be on Southborough Center here, so that as a reminder of when the town really did come into existence?
What do you think, Annie? I on the several points, personally, I'm a little would be concerned about the 1727 thing on this sign, because it doesn't, of course, that's the incorporation of the town, but not necessarily the historic center or the district. Then I can show you folks the color issue, because I do have the website queued up, Jim. That might help. And what was the third thing?
The placed on verbiage.
Oh, don't they, Annie? Isn't the other alternative that they often on these signs they say listed?
Listed. Yeah.
So
and I think we have leeway on what we want to use. This is all, I think, what we need to decide on as a commission. So I'm really glad, Jim, that you're kind of bringing up this, that type of feedback. I kind of just move forward with the mock-ups with, just after a brief conversation with Kevin. But this is like kind of the critical work that we need to do to finalize what these signs will look like and what they'll say. So I think this is exactly the type of discussion I was hoping to achieve.
Yeah.
And folks, this is an example this is the vendor's website. Obviously, it's a different shape, but am I correct in saying, Annie, that this is sort of the black, or the black color that we were considering, because in that case, the posts are black as well, and it would be this kind of really nice sort of elegant match.
Kevin, you're still sharing the PDF.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
Okay, let me stop the share and start it again. I confess not to being the greatest at can you see it now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. This is sort of the black, an example of what we thought would be attractive, both because, again, some of these signs will be on hopefully a townhouse and a library, but also because they'd be consistent with the poles. And you believe it or not, we have found in dealing, Annie contacted at least a half a dozen different vendors.
Probably more.
More than that. There are always issues with price and this and that and the next thing, but it's also actually getting the poles to look right. At one point, I was scrambling around trying to spec Home Depot fence posts because I was just desperate to, so that's one example. I think, was that considered, Andy, the black as well?
Yeah, so I am on their website trying to find the like what they actually call their colors. So the color of the mock-ups and how our project is currently spec'd is called the dark oxide brown.
Okay.
And I believe what you're looking at is the black. So there is a distinct difference. I've been told that there's not an additional charge between the dark oxide and the black. But that is something that we need to, spec
right
before we move forward. So if we like the black of the sign to match the black of the pole, then we would need to, change the design that you're seeing on the screen as such.
Right. I think they would just change the color. And, the reason I didn't concern myself that much with it, because I know it's inaccurate, like you get a better sense from these pictures. Is there someplace you want me to go?
Yes. So go to options. Yeah. Background.
Okay.
And then if you scroll to the bottom, so you'll see
right.
black, and then directly underneath it is dark oxide. So those are kind of the options that we're considering.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate example of the black, because it's not nearly as attractive. It's just
with the silver.
Yeah, I don't like that. But we had seen, I think, back on the previous page. There's some of these mock-ups, like this one here, is clearly done in that black, right? And I find personally like that a contrast quite attractive. I don't know. Is there some consensus? People just want to go around and say, I like the black, or I like the bronze. What is it? Dark oxide?
Dark oxide, yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, I think the dark oxide, I mean, they typically do this, right? They place the dark oxide sign on the black pole, and it's not like it's going to look bad, you know? So I think if you folks have a preference one way or another, you know, it's all good to me.
Here's my opinion. I think the Riverview Cemetery in black looks like a cemetery. I like the oxide brown, and I agree that a black pole does not fight it. The poles are typically black, but having a bronze looking, you know, marker going into town is I think more attractive than black. The other comment Michael texted me and has passed along is that the word "the" on the layout may not be necessary. You know, just go right into the district. Don't have to say the district.
Well, that is a possibility, and I actually have the National Register form right in front of me, and it says Southborough Center Historic District. So officially, the is not absolutely necessary, and this is the certificate, if you see in the little box, that I've got from Bill Galvin, and it's simply Southborough Center Historic District. So the could be stricken altogether.
And that could potentially, if you folks felt it was useful, you could use that space maybe smaller to put the year of incorporation if it's relevant. I think reminding people the town's been here a long time is, especially when you're talking historic district, is useful. But that's personal view.
Anybody have thoughts on that particular point?
I like the idea of removing the word the layout.
And you broke up quite a bit. Could you repeat that?
Oh, I'm sorry. It says my connection's unstable. I'm in favor of removing that word "the." I think that's a good suggestion. Create more negative space in the design, which will improve the layout.
How do you feel about putting a year on it?
Can I chime in?
Please do.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Annie. I would say get rid of the. We don't need it. And then I'm in favor of the bronze. I'm a little traditional. And then I was going to say, to Jim's point earlier, do we want to use the town crest logo, whatever we call it at the top, because then that would incorporate the date for the town of Southborough?
That's interesting.
Yeah,
That's a good point, Kate.
That's more relevant than the US crest.
Yeah.
Kevin had
You know, like
mentioned-
this one, what is that? Rochester elevator. Is that like a train? What is that? Oh, maybe a barn. I don't know what that is.
The steam engine.
no,
Whatever that is.
but yeah, that's the bronze color. So yeah, I mean, we can go back and try with the town logo on it. I personally find the town logo so insipid that no offense, that the sort of national kind of seal to me is a far more sort of appealing. But if you guys want to, we'll try it. Let's do it. And Annie, can we investigate? I mean, to Kate's point, I guess we don't need the year. Would it be large enough to see the 1727 if we used the?
I can't really picture it. I know it's not the prettiest logo, but it might be more applicable, but I don't know. I'd have to look at it and see it. But I don't know that it's a very large date, but at least it would incorporate the date if that's something that people are looking for. That was the only reason I suggested it.
Fair enough. I mean, I think let's go back. I mean, because we got to get this right.
May as well look at it.
I'm not the delay is frustrating because one of the reasons we really feel compelled to try to move as quickly as we can is, to be good citizens in spending this money we've been graciously given, but also because we're worried about price hikes. And, they tell me that inflation is slowing, but I'm still nervous.
So in terms of, just to address that, I've been told that since we have, we've started the design for these roadside signs, we have a firm quote for the signs. The pricing for these ones won't change. And the sooner we can move forward with the landmark signs that we had discussed, the more sure we can be about that pricing. So I do think time is of the essence to move forward. And, I don't want to delay, making decisions on all of this, unnecessarily, but I think we are okay with, pricing kind of being locked in for these signs right now.
Okay, so here's the game plan. How about this? Let's investigate taking out the. Let's secondarily investigate getting the town seal on instead of the federal seal and see how that plays. Then I think there's some sentiment towards the bronze. I'm fine with that. And then lastly, are you folks interested in that? I personally like placed on rather than listed in, but I'm ultimately agnostic on the point. And then finally, do you folks want that by the U.S. Department of the Interior rhetoric on the bottom? Are you okay with it being off? Again, our feeling was that having it off, as Andy says, negative space for the rest of the stuff to be a little bit larger.
Yeah,
And
I'm fine with that being off, and I like placed on as well.
Okay, well, let's try to go forward with that if that's agreeable to everybody. Object now or hold your peace, and we'll.
Sorry, Kevin, I just wanted to say, I don't think Grant has shared any feedback. So I just wanted to make sure he had an opportunity if he had anything to add. I don't think we've given him a chance to go around and just share any thoughts yet.
Thanks, Annie. Yeah, I agree with removing the word the. I personally prefer the look of the bronze, was it bronze oxide as opposed to the black. Personally, I wouldn't mind, if you're doing more mock-ups, I wouldn't mind with the removal of the word the, seeing how the Department of the Interior plays on the bottom, just seeing that kind of as an example. It's funny, I was, if you wanted to include it, and we're talking about seals, you could do the seal of the Department of the Interior, but that has a bison on it, so that might not be particularly appropriate for Southborough. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts. I think largely in line with everyone else, removing the word the.
Annie, could you get them to, let's say if we went got the out of there, and could you convince them to be nice to us and try one with the Department of the Interior rhetoric on the bottom? Because I think I'd like to see it myself, Grant, So, if they're, we're going to spend, 25 grand with them. I think they can do it.
Yes, exactly. And they want to get it right as much as we want to get it right. So I think they understand that, several is just part of the process to do that.
Great. All right. Well, thank you. So we'll
Thanks, Annie.
I'll send you back to work on that. Now, the second part of this, and I'm going to try to do this real quick. We also have in that bid, there were for smaller signs, one for the townhouse, one for the library, and one for the old burial ground that we had conceived of as post-mounted at like the gate where you enter into. And, it's remarkable how sometimes you don't see the forest for the trees because all of us missed somehow it got by us, and I think that I walk over there so much, and I you know, there is a very nice plaque already at the old burial ground, placed in 1995 on a stone right in front of the American flag pole that's there. And I frankly think sometimes I get in there and I get so distracted by those battle flags that I don't even see. It becomes an argument for, well, another tale for another time. But editing that space so that you actually see what's there. And if I may, I'll try to quickly show you, in fact, what is there. And I'll see if this works. And I'm sorry that I think this might be it. Yeah. Now, I'm not partial to the oldie. I find that a little bit twee, but there it is in our old burial ground. It says this tablet was erected in you all seen that?
Mm-hmm.
This
Yep.
tablet was erected in 1995 in memory of the members of the early generations of the town who were buried here in graves marked and unmarked between 1727 and 1895. That's accurate. That says exactly what needs to be said. And I am not in favor of cluttering up our downtown with an unnecessary sign. So my feeling is that what we would be putting there would have said fundamentally the same thing, that we should scotch the eliminate the pole mounted sign that would be from that position. I pasted off the other day, from there to the gate where we were thinking about marking is 60 feet. It's, in other words, it is the sort of very definition of redundant. So my modest proposal is that we honor that one by getting the clutter away from it. Again, another story for another time. And don't put a sign on a post 60 feet away that says essentially the same thing. If that makes sense. And return about $880 to the ARPA folks. And I'm sure our select board would be only too glad to accept it and spend it elsewhere. It also, by the way, gives us a little cushion in case there's any, thing going on. While you think about that, I will say then the other, with regard to the two signs for the townhouse and the library, we were so focused on the road signs that we were really remiss, and I take full responsibility for this in terms of reaching out and initiating a conversation with the library folks much sooner. I have recently, and there was some point where I wanted to check with the state, and I did, about the rhetoric of the signs and if it was running afoul of anything. I won't get into the weeds on that, but they gave me full clearance. They thought what we were doing was a good idea and that we were on the right path. So I feel satisfied in that department. And so of late, I've had conversations both with Ryan Donahue, the library director, and with Marguerite Landry, the chair of the Library Board of Trustees, on this issue. And they are enthusiastic. There was some feeling, because both the library and the townhouse are recent recipients of Community Preservation Act monies for facade restoration. I believe $1 million for the library, and I believe, is it $3 million for the townhouse? Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. And they require a CPC signage as to sort of denote it or designate it. In a conversation with Ryan, there was some feeling, the library director, there was some feeling that if he could get that sort of rhetoric on like the same sign, it would be sort of a win-win kind of thing, with Southborough Library listed on the National Register of Historic Places, facade restoration funding provided. The rhetoric is something like the citizens of Southborough.
Through the Community Preservation Act.
Thank you. And I said we have flexibility in this. I'm amenable to that thinking, if that helps you and that works. Marguerite is less enthusiastic about that notion, and I think she would like to keep them separate. So the way I've left it with them, I said, you guys talk it out, you figure out what you want. We're here with glad tidings of great joy to try to give you, this designation and give it to you the way that you want it. They're going to meet fairly soon and sort of hack this out, I think, and come to a sort of conclusion of what they want. But I think I would like to see the rhetoric consistent between the library and the townhouse, and the design consistent between the library and the townhouse. So I believe who I need to talk to is John Parent with regard to the townhouse, the facilities director. So, but I'm holding till I get a better sense from the library folks what they want. Does that make sense? So the plan, and those signs are slightly smaller, as I've explained, both to Ryan and to Marguerite. I don't have I think they're, Annie, offhand, do you recall? What are they?
14 by 18.
14 by 18. Those would be like the wall plaques. And I said, because in my view, and I think in Annie's view as well, right, that we don't need this old burial ground sign at all. In fact, it constitutes clutter. That therefore we would have a little bit of money, to possibly, if the library desired, depending on what the rhetoric. Ryan has talked about, if you can imagine the library, and I'll bring this up, screen sharing again, fair warning, is that he's expressed some interest, and here's the facade of the library, right? And he's expressed some interest in, you see these limestone panels under the windows, of actually affixing the National Register thing there. So if that's the case, and again, I think that's something that the director and the library board of trustees need to discuss amongst themselves. But if that's the case, he might want to size up slightly so that it kind of is proportional. But if they end up deciding that they actually want it next to the door, there is a plaque to the left of the front door on the brick, an older bronze. It's a fairly small plaque that describes the donation of the library by Fay to the town, right? So I think when I talked to Marguerite, there was some feeling that she would like a sort of a kind of similar thing, perhaps on the other side of the door. So once they work out what they want, in other words, I made the commitment to them to try to give them what they want, as close as what they want, right? Because it's their, it's their building. So we're a little bit stopped on that, and I was concerned about pricing, funding, shipping. It's a separate shipping charge. However, there's about a 5 to 6 month production time on these signs. So if we get the road signs, let's say we can agree at a September meeting on a final production on the road signs, we can place that order, even if it takes the library and the townhouse and us to coordinate that another month or so. It would be fine, because the other stuff won't have shipped yet. It'll still be in production. You follow what I'm saying? So we won't throw off our budget. So we're still in, I think in line to make good progress with this. But it takes a little finesse.
May I just add one thing here? So I did float this idea past the chair of the Community Preservation Committee, because, you know, obviously we need to gain their support of, you know, kind of working collaboratively and combining efforts on the, you know, National Register signage and the CPC signage. So I haven't heard back, but we do have a meeting. I think it's in 2 weeks. So I anticipate that this will be on, you know, on the agenda for our next committee meeting. And I'll make sure that we can talk about it then. But I imagine we will need buy-in from the CPC as well to move forward, you know, with this concept in general. So there are quite a few moving pieces, you know, with, you know, Ryan Donovan from the library, John Parent from the townhouse, CPC, us. So it's kind of a, you know, big collaborative project that, you know, if we can make it happen, I think will be great. Just kind of stay tuned for more information from the CPC end.
Okay, fair enough. It's complicated, folks, but that's how it goes when you're trying to pull together a lot of different parties. And so, and like I said, I actually don't know if ultimately the library folks are really going to want to do it that way. But stay tuned. And meanwhile, we'll move forward in the part that we can, and try to come back with a final design for people's approval by September, if that's amenable to everybody. Great. All right. So we'll move on. And, you know, we still got some stuff, and I see that Marnie is here, and I so hate to sort of keep her waiting to talk to us. This is with regard to the scenic roads bylaw. Would there be any objection to sort of moving that agenda item up so that we can, you know, like not make her sort of wait around? Is that I can do that, Kate, right? You know the law. Is that okay? Is that agreeable to everybody?
Yep.
It's fine. What that was
Works
the
for
next,
me.
that was the next item in there, wasn't it, Kevin?
Well, we got chair's report, and there's actually some very important items here that I really have to get in. Stuff on the working group. I put at Kate's suggestion, you know, election of officers to kind of do that process, because typically was, you know, we did it in March, but normally it's done at like, you know, beginning of the fiscal year. And I didn't do it in July because we were busy with scenic roads and with the presentation from Greg Walwer. And that was a marathon of a meeting. So I kind of would like to get to that if we can.
Well, yeah, I agree. Marnie's been waiting. Let's.
But I'd like to bring Marnie in, if that's okay, and just sort of deal with this now, because it's so kind, and they had a very long meeting last night themselves. So Marnie, I'm going to promote you to panelist, if that's all right with you. Hi there, and I think you've been there for a while, so I'm so appreciative after, I know, a long night for you last night. Come chat with us tonight. So thank you.
No problem. It's nice to see everybody. It's a long night for you too, so don't feel bad about me. Hey, this is life, right?
As somebody said to me, you know, these meetings that everybody gets a little bit cranky after about 9 minutes, and I quite agree. So we're now 2 hours and 15 minutes in, so I have to be on my good behavior, you know, because I just know my natural, and my iced tea is long gone. So yeah, please, the floor is yours. And do you I'm sorry to interrupt you. Did you want to, if I make you co-host, that allows you, if you want to show anything? I didn't know, you know, I shared the PowerPoint.
Yeah, I think we can make this really brief, and like I'll leave it to the commission to be able to ask questions. But I think at this point, what I wanted to be able to do, so thank you, Kevin. Thank you to the Historic Commission for bringing me back. I appreciate it. Annie, I think it was you who said, I'd really kind of like to understand why you didn't look at other towns and define scenic. And, it really did get me thinking. And I think, as we really evaluated the feedback at town meeting, the town meeting participants wanted to understand, like, why aren't we defining it? Why are we just having this broad sweep of just making every road scenic? The conversation last night was actually really productive among the planning board members. So it was at the end, Andrew had to, well, no, Andrew was there for that. So sorry. So it was Mr. Mills, Mimi Luttrell, myself, and Mr. Muria, and Jesse Stein was not there last night. And so what I basically did, and the slides that you have, we don't need to pull up. I did research on 6 surrounding towns. And so 6 surrounding towns do define scenic, but when they define scenic, it's still some level of subjective nature there. And so the thought was kind of twofold. So we could either define scenic, which I think is the kind of the feeling from the floor that we heard is that, like, is everything in Southborough scenic? And so there's that mentality. So we can define scenic, and there's some ways where we can define scenic, which may be rather like, I'm going to say obtuse. So they're still really kind of large and vague, but there is a way where we could kind of capture some definitions around scenic. And then the second way is, this is more administrative. So the reason why we're defining scenic is because it makes things easier logistically on the administrative side of things. So it doesn't actually impact town residents at all. And when we think about the word scenic, it's not the words. And I'm going to compliment Grant Farrington for his words last night, speaking as an individual, not as a representative of Historic Commission last night, where he's like, what might be helpful if you help to explain what scenic is and what scenic isn't. And I think by Mass General Law, what scenic is or is not, it's not bucolic, it's not beautiful, it's not the words that we associate a definition of scenic. But what it is the preservation of streets that have trees and that have stone walls. And that's pretty much what Mass General Law has defined as what scenic is. So that really kind of leaves it really wide open for towns to define. So as I'm getting to that second point where I would say me, myself, and Mr. Mills were around, let's kind of define, but maybe leverage some scenic, some more obtuse language. So I will, Kevin, I don't know if I'll share one screen. Here we go. You guys can see this one slide. So the administrative route, if we went that way, would really mean that it's the reason why we're doing this is because it's confusing. So in town today, it's really hard to understand what we need to do to protect our trees and to protect stone walls. And so if we make it as easy as possible logistically, we can then just simply say that all roads are scenic except for the numeric roads in town, which don't have the ability to be defined that way, and that we name every road scenic, and that allows that it's a very simple logistic process that needs to be followed. And that means if there's trees or stone walls on any of the roads in town, that they need to actually have planning board buy-in. So the administrative component and the burden falls on planning board to really be able to have the hearings. And it also falls to our selectmen as the tree wardens to be able to hear those hearings. So that's the kind of the concept around the administrative burden. It does not impact the residents at all in any way, whether their road is scenic or not scenic. It doesn't change anything because it only affects those trees, those stone walls that are in the public right of way. So I'm going to pause because I've said so much and I'm trying to be fast so that you guys don't have to spend the night here. Any questions so far? Okay.
No, it's clear.
I would say, no, Jim, please go ahead.
I was gonna say, no, it's clear. Thank you.
I would just say that I've utterly lost my train of thought. Sorry about that. Well, please continue, Marnie.
So.
Oh,
with-
I'm sorry.
Yep.
Can I just jump in? What I wanted to say was I did send out the full presentation that you prepared and wasn't really covered, if I recall, on your meeting last night. But it was very interesting to me to learn that, and you had done all this wonderful research and put it together for us. And I'm very grateful. I really thank you for it, because I learned quite a bit. Not least, of course, that most of the surrounding towns or all of the ones that you had surveyed, what it was of Sudbury,
Wayland, Northborough,
Marlborough, I think Hopkinton you had in there.
Hopkinton, and Ashland.
Yeah, and all of them, in fact, do offer a definition, and they're often very similar, and they're very broadly based. But there is a set of criteria offered in other local scenic roads bylaws, which I found. That was the essence of my own. Those of you that weren't there, Grant was there last night. I was online and I rang in and I said, again, only as a private citizen, that I was certainly struck by the fact that, in fact, as Marnie revealed through her comprehensive research, that other towns do define it. And I have some personal reservation about only defining something in the negative. This is what scenic roads are not. They are not pretty, accepted. Then what are they? And I would say that the Historical Commission members are familiar with this concept through our discussion last summer with the rep from the Mass Historical Commission, who, when he was guiding us through the Southborough Center Historic District. And he made you all remember that, I'm sure. I don't know if Grant might have seen it as well, but he made a wonderful presentation. And one of the great takeaways from that presentation was that houses in let's say homes in historic districts or homes that are eligible for National Register designation are not necessarily pretty, but they tell a story, and so they're not necessarily cute or pretty, or a house that you might stop and want to put on Instagram. However, there was then a positive definition offered, and the definition had to do with the stories that are told by such homes, in terms of the social history and fabric of the times that they were built, the ways that homes are sometimes altered over many years pursuant to many different uses. The stone house is a very good example of that in Southborough. That happens to be a very pretty house, but it was also two houses once. It was, it was a house and a workshop that when Doc Stone bought it, decided to join what had been the town barber shop to his home, with a small addition, thus arguably in some sense sort of altering, ruining the purity of the original structure, but nonetheless over time, what I mean, it tells a story. So I think the Historical Commission is sort of familiar with the idea that pretty ain't all that, but that there are other factors. But when it comes to sort of historic homes and historic districts, it has to do with it. There was also a positive value offered up by the MHC rep. And one of the things that I personally had some reservation about was if there is no, and I understand, I guess, to kind of suggest where my thinking is going. I thought, I accept if, let's say, the planning board decides that they don't want to define scenic roads. And what I heard last night was the suggestion that it is simply, we're going to use the scenic roads bylaw as an administrative function to draw all the roads in town that are not numbered together as a category. And now scenic roads will be basically every road in town, not numbered. And then there's the tree bylaw as a sort of separate thing. And the tree bylaw really hinges on the scenic roads designation because that grants the authority to the tree bylaw to sort of function as I understood it. In other words, the way you define the roads that are subject to the tree bylaw, it's scenic roads.
No, just
No.
clarity, Kevin, is
Sure.
every public shade tree is already protected by Mass General Law,
Right,
regardless, whether it's on a scenic road or a numbered road
right,
or a non-scenic road, it is protected.
right. And it's just that the tree bylaw is a more ambitious.
That is really just to bring more detail to how do we administratively manage trees in our own town because they're not being managed today.
Right, and I understand that. But to go back to the scenic roads bylaw, I guess what I think about it is that if it's purely an administrative thing, just to roll this back, the reason, I had sort of reached out to planning, and I had said last night that I'm so in admiration of the way the planning board runs things and what they do, and certainly the attention that the planning board has brought to trees and stone walls and the sort of movement that you all have created by your efforts. Anybody who's watching can see that things are happening as a result of all that. But when the article was pulled in May, it seemed to have a lot to do with the fact that there was going to be this discussion about what was scenic, right? And since the Historical Commission, along with Conservation and Planning, are one of the three bodies that can nominate a scenic road, I was sitting there thinking, well, gee, maybe there would be a conversation about definitions, nomination, and that we naturally, if that's going to be the case, would have some role to play in it. If, however, we're going to just sweep every road non-numbered in town into the designation, and there's no sort of adjudication process to be done, I think for me, this is just one opinion out of 5, that I don't see what role the Historical Commission would have in that process, except to just wish you well. In other words, we don't have anything to do. And so my kind of feeling is if the planning board's position is we're simply view the scenic roads designation as an administrative function to define every road in town as a scenic road, I would say, okay, I actually support that. And I think I would vote for it at town meeting as a private citizen. I just don't see any role for the Historical Commission in it because we'd really have anything to do. It's already done. Like you're going to sweep every road in. There's going to be nobody defining or nobody making any judgments or evaluations based on any set of criteria. There's simply going to be every road in town as a scenic road. Well, okay, that's fine. That would ensure equal treatment under the tree bylaw, right? For every road in town. So I'm actually a supporter of it. I just don't think the Historical Commission has a role to play if that's the case. Does that make sense? Or you might not agree with it, but I don't know if what I've explained makes any sense. In other words, you brought forward the fact that all these other towns actually define a scenic road. If that were going to be the role or the way that the planning board, and it's your article, so if that's the way like you all wanted to do it, and I understand that it opens up a big can of worms, and I know that's why the resistance to doing it is there, because everybody looks at, you brought forward this idea, and I thought you were kind of leaning toward, sort of saying, yeah, I think maybe there's some merit in this, but if the rest of the group doesn't want to do it, you're out, sort of outvoted. I personally, I accept that and I go, okay, well, that's fine. That's how the planning board wants to conduct their campaign on behalf of trees. And like I said, I mean, I've indicated, and I was going to say it last night, and I was a little reluctant, but I have some reservations about the tree bylaw itself. But the scenic roads thing, if I was at town meeting right now, I'd vote for. I just don't see a role for the historical commission at this point in it, because we don't have anything to do except endorse it. And this is my own view of the role of a board and commission, that if we were to go to town meeting, and if I, as the chair of this commission, were to be asked, why are you doing this? Like, what have you done? What have you folks contributed to it? I would have nothing to say, because we haven't done anything and wouldn't be doing anything, because we wouldn't have a role by the nature of the way the planning board is wants to use this bylaw as an administrative kind of catch-all or funnel. And so again, like, and I grant you'll please take over for me, but my own personal view is that I will vote for the scenic roads bylaw as you're presenting it, as it's every road in town that's not numbered, but I personally don't see us having a co-sponsorship role, only because we have no sort of input or role to play in it. So it's, to me, it's a sort of, I'm not sure, this is a philosophical thing. And again, I'm a big friend of the planning board and just love and admire all of you guys and the work you do, but I don't see our role. So I'll shut up and let Grant talk.
Yeah, Kevin, if I could just jump in real quick.
Sure.
I actually do see a role. You know, I think you had mentioned at our last meeting that, you know, trees can be considered historic assets, and that, you know, as part of this, you know, as the historical commission, we have a role to preserve historic assets. And I think that is kind of the angle on which we could approach it, by saying, hey, sure, you know, we didn't create this bylaw, the planning board put it forward, but, you know, we are, you know, we value trees, and we think that trees are, you know, contribute to the historic character of town, and therefore we, you know, will lend our credence to this bylaw in order to, you know, better preserve, because we think this will better preserve those assets. I mean, I think that could be an argument that, you know, if we were willing to do this, you could make on the floor, but just thought I would add that.
Let me jump in. Grant, I agree with you. I think that we can endorse it, but to Kevin's point, I don't see it as an ongoing rule in determining what's in and what's out if everything's going to be rolled up and in. So that's a pretty firm point. Marnie, I think the part of the conundrum here, and maybe you were too far down the road to change it, but this whole bylaw being called a scenic roads bylaw then begs the question of what is and what isn't, and it gets into definitions, and it's a mess. If we're trying to preserve, or if the intent is to preserve the stone walls and the trees, then it becomes almost like a historic preservation bylaw, not just a scenic roads bylaw, because it's really about the established nature of the walls and the trees. The only thing that seems to get run afoul of is if every road in town gets rolled in there, and I don't know the construction dates of other roads, whether that would make them not properly categorized if the whole thing was called a historic roads bylaw. But maybe that would be a simpler way to avoid the confusion over is it scenic or not.
So can I speak, Mr. Miller?
Oh,
Please. Thanks. So thanks for the feedback. Jim, to your point, so I think the Mass General Law defines it as scenic. So I think we'd have to kind of keep it within the containment of whatever scenic is. But that said, and I appreciate the perspective. I think that the planning board was not clear. Like, I think some people felt, one, it's administrative. Some people felt we should still define it, because at the end of the day, people need to define it. But I think the challenge is if the way that you define it still includes every road in town, all roads are scenic, it still kind of defeats the purpose, which I think ultimately is what you're getting to. So the thought, what ended up coming out last night was that the trees and the stone walls that's Mass General Law, that's how it's defined. So if we keep those as 1 and 2, and you can add on these other components, my thought and what my willingness to the planning board last night was that I added 6, 7, and 8 because this adds to like the kind of the historic buildings, historic significance, and it kind of chimes in on the historic components of things. There are 68 streets. Let me just pull up that listing. I had agreed to the planning board that I would actually literally drive all these streets and say, you know, do they meet the criteria? And then come back to the planning board and say, if these criteria, and again, like if it has a tree on it, okay, it's kind of part of the shall be considered in what a scenic road is. Or if it has a stone wall, it shall be considered. And so it's not necessarily a must be. And so a lot of these components are what other towns have utilized in their language. So I've tried to not create anything that's new, but I've kind of adapted what other towns have. And those slides are in your deck that we can share, that you can look at some of the background. I think if the general consensus is, I don't think we have to make a decision tonight, but if you guys are willing for me to like look at all the 68 streets and kind of rank the criteria and say, yeah, it hits, it hits, it hits, it hits. You know, I think I will say the general gestalt is that it would be really wonderful from an administrative point if everybody in town just recognized that every non-numbered street, you just have to protect the trees and the stone walls, and like just put a hearing in to put a tree in, just don't rip down a tree that's in the public right away. And I think that's the gestalt. How we get there, I think, is up to us moving forward. I still believe that some sort of definition needs to exist. Whether these all align to the definition, I think we kind of have to wait and see until I do my drive-by. So if you guys are kind of comfortable with these definitions, while broad and rather obtuse is my language that I'm going to use, if I take the ability to kind of go through everything and rank them based on those kind of 8 criteria and say, you know, check mark what they have, and then come back just to let you know where they fit. Do all 68 fit? I mean, I think the hope would be, yes, they all fit, but the reality might not be that they do.
Marnie, I have to say, I'm so appreciative. I know this is a lot of work, and you're just really, I'm really grateful. And I know how hard this is. And again, for the difficulty, of course, that I know that you face with all this is that the 2 previous times scenic roads were designated, they swept all this stuff in. And I know the concern is you offer up a definition now. It's not that you had this question about, do we have to go back and sort of delist any streets, or would that ever come up? And what would people, it's another thing for someone to object to. And you're trying to really thread the needle because you're dealing with past precedent and trying to figure out the way forward. And it's complicated for me personally. I mean, I just want to be very honest about it, because I've indicated that I actually have a couple of serious reservations about points in the tree bylaw, which has nothing to do with us. That's purely a personal matter. But I, from the beginning, sort of viewed these 2 initiatives as very closely related. And so, I'm fully in support of the impulse behind them, and have a lot of faith in the people doing the work. It's just a matter of my private thoughts about the tree bylaw are one thing. And then from the commission standpoint, like I said, I have this, Grant's argument is an interesting one to me, and I need to think about it. Philosophically, as I've said, if there's actually no role then to sort of hold the the towel, you know, or the whole
Sure.
cape for the planning board. It's not compelling to me.
Get it.
Because I think it kind of puts us in a rather feeble position. And that, but that's, you know, my philosophical leanings. And I'm only one vote in 5, but I'd like to, you know, if your impulse is to sort of press a little forward, I know time is going to grow short. But if you're willing to do that, we can leave it an open matter and try to, if that's amenable to the rest of the commission, you know, leave it open for a while longer and see how this plays out. I mean, I really enjoy the conversation. I find it very interesting. And if we can, you know, look, worse comes to worse, sort of mighty 5 of the planning board has to do it without us, which I don't, you know, I think you'd be just fine. But it, you know, if it works out that a majority wants to get on board, great too. So if you're willing to, you know, press on, I guess I got the impression last night from the planning board folks, and I know it was late, and you know, I don't think anybody expected, you know, a posted 7:10 hearing to actually get off the boards at about 9 o'clock, because all that other stuff at 220 Turnpike went on for the CAS building, went on for a really, really long time. Everybody shut up. And I thought to myself, if this was underway, I'm looking at the camera, I'm going, wow, the room is filled. There's lots of people. There's going to be really robust talk about the trees and the scenic roads. And as soon as the CAS thing was over, everybody got up and left, you know, I think except Grant, who hung in there, you know, and I was like, oh, and it was like 9 o'clock and everybody's tired and doesn't want to hear it. But I was getting the impression that, you know, there was a feeling, and I understand it, right? You know, you've worked on it for 4 years. I'm tired. I'm done. This is what it is. We're going to town meeting with what we got, and take it or leave it. So I wasn't sure there was a lot of, I don't know, you know, willingness to, maybe it was just the hour.
Yeah, I think the point is that the belief is that there's a scenic road needs to be defined. Like, I think between Mimi, myself, and Andrew, the challenge is, how do you define it? So what I would say is, I didn't really mean to take this so much time right now. I mean, I think it's within your obligation to say to yourselves, do you guys want to continue this? Because I don't want to belabor the point if it's not an opportunity for you. I am going to drive all the streets. We've put a meeting on the calendar, I want to say for September 1st, because we have to get the warrant article in by September 2nd. So I will be doing that. I will be ranking likely this weekend. So what I can do is, at least by email, you don't need to make a vote right now, but by email, I'll provide you with where do those streets fall on the criteria that I've listed here with the 8 that include these kind of very obtuse definitions.
Mm-hmm.
The probability is they will fall in within the definitions. And then the gestalt is, to your point, Kevin, is okay, then why bother with the definition? So why don't we just leave it as an open discussion item? And I really appreciate your time. I know you've got quite a lot more on your agenda, and I really didn't intend to take more than 10 minutes. So I'm sorry.
It was sweet of you to come, and very kind of you to wait and talk to us. And I am inclined, if I think everyone's going to be agreeable to this, to leave the matter open. We'll circle back to it at our next meeting. And you know, with the idea, and, you know, of course, I know the warrant's got to go off and all that stuff, but, you know, hell, advisory, you know, doesn't come out with their thing until the night of points, yep. Right? Yeah. So why can't we, you know, so if we're not officially in the documentation or paper, if we vote, you know, in support, let's say, or if we decide not to, whatever it is in September, you know, that still maybe do some advantage to the planning board. I mean, I think, my personal impulse is to, if we can help great. If we can't, we will graciously step aside and, not try to muck up what, we'll leave it to the voters to vote on their conscience on the article itself. So if that's agreeable to everybody, can we just leave this matter to be continued? Any objection?
I just have a quick technical question,
Sure.
Kevin. So I know that the select board is closing the warrant, I think on the 7th, and then whatever they call it, finalizing it, going to print on, I think it was the 20th. And I know that our next meeting on our agenda is the 20th. So
Yes.
would there be any advantage to holding our meeting earlier than then, or is it okay that it's at the same time that that's all going on? Like, let's just say that we happen to vote to do it that night. Would that
I
get
mean,
in?
I'm willing to consider moving up the meeting if there's sentiment in that direction.
I just don't know how the timing of the warrant process works, so that's why.
Yeah, I guess my feeling was with regard to the warrant that I don't need to see our names printed in it. You know what I mean? Like they can, the planning can do their thing, and then if we decide to come in, that in the same way that again advisory, often doesn't come to a decision until the night of. They're at the table down there, making a final decision that we could do something similar, but certainly hopefully by September.
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
Good. All right, Marnie, I really do appreciate it once again. I know you've worked really hard in this, and you put, what you sent us together in response to our, kind of questions or nags or whatever they were. So it was very kind of you.
Well, it's a great question, and I think it really got me thinking. So I think it was in the right direction and in the right vein of what we do forward. So
yeah,
thank you so much for all of your time.
Yeah, and again, I mean, and I hope it came across when I spoke last night. It was the intention here is to try to anticipate. Listen to what was said at town meeting in May, and I'm trying to think about what might be coming, and so I think it's as tedious and annoying as it is, it's better to hear it now than on the floor, when you have a chance to deal with it. So anyway, thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time. I'm sorry you're going to go on late tonight.
Well, I'm going to try to
I'll sleep well and drink lots of water.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Take care. And let me see. There we go. Apparently when I was, I had promoted Ray and Michael to panelists so they could talk and share. When I took them out, I took them out of the meeting altogether. My phone was, blowing up, and sorry to them. They said they'll watch it later. Somehow I seemed to have banned when I took Michael off from panelist, I somehow banned him altogether from the meeting. Outcast raised a hand. Who would that be? I will allow Outcast to talk. Who are you, Outcast?
That would be me. I've been watching.
Oh, okay, you're back.
Yeah, just under another name.
My apologies for apparently banning. Oh, that's hence the Outcast.
Yes.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad you're back. Was there something you wanted to add, or you're just letting me?
No. I just wanted to watch the rest of the meeting, but I couldn't because you threw me out.
That was not intentional, my friend, and I'm very sorry.
No problem.
I will not throw you out this time.
Okay, let's try. Let's see.
I'm going to see if I can do it. Disable talking, mute. Oh, I removed him.
Oh,
that must have been it. I'm sorry. Disable talking. All right. I think he's still there. Good. All right. Quickly. I've got to get through this. It's very important. Chair's report. And this is on demolition delay bylaw activity. And this is some stuff you guys need to hear. Item 1, 22 Edgewood Road. Again, I mentioned earlier that both Kate and I have been trained very kindly by the building commissioner, Lori Lavoli, and her able assistant, Julianne Lamy, on this OpenGov system, which is very useful in helping to track demolition delay bylaw activity. You go in, you can see it. I get notices in my Outlook, and I log on, and I can make comments and follow the path of the paperwork and all that kind of stuff. So to update, 22 Edgewood Road is the Arthur J. Kiley house, the 1924 bungalow that we were all sort of so in love with, and that we voted to preferentially preserve. 9 months ago, as of August 15th. Well, as of August 15th, those 9 months are up. Unfortunately, there was no other solution to be found, and the applicant, Mr. Kyle Tucker, has been freed from demolition delay bylaw jail, so to speak, by a click of my mouse, and we'll see what happens with that property. There's really nothing more to be done. We did our best, and that's the end of it. I will skip to 42 Main for a moment and say that that's the Doc Stone house. I had an exchange with Jim Shea yesterday. And I will say again that he has been such an unbelievable pleasure to deal with and to work with. He is the head of Fay School's Board of Trustees. He's unbelievably responsive. I send the guy an email and I get a call back in 20 minutes or an email back. He's very, very responsive. He's still on the case. As I indicated last time, they have a meeting with the full Board of Trustees to take a vote on this in August. And I had hoped that that meeting would have taken place by now. It has not. It is scheduled for Wednesday, August 31st, as I understand it, the last day of the month. And he promises me, that we'll have some indication at that point. He did say that he's having quite a lot of trouble right now with architects and getting everybody lined up and getting his calls answered, which is shocking to me because they'd be an excellent, excellent client, the Fay School. I think they pay well and they have lots of buildings to examine, as I also indicated earlier. But my sister's an architect and I know quite a few architects through her, and I know that there's this world of feast and famine. And when they're feasting, some of them are not very good about answering phone calls. And when they're famining, all they're doing is pounding the pavement trying to get work. And so I don't know, I think they're in the feast mode right now, as a point of fact. And he's having trouble getting some calls returned, shockingly, which is unfair because Jim is really a good guy about answering calls. But I hope to have some answer shortly. That demolition delay bylaw, for the record, we invoked it in April. So it's good until January. I know Jim Blaschke had been concerned about a hold on it. And as I said before, I have discussed that with him. And if it comes to that point, I think he would be amenable to it. They are working very hard to come to a good solution. So again, I ask people to stay tuned. Now, 89 Framingham Road is the one that I particularly need to bring to your attention because it's kind of fresh news to everybody. Here's the story. To refresh your perhaps memory, 89 Framingham Road, and I'm going to share my screen yet again briefly to show you. 89 Framingham Road is the house that had this happen to it the week before Christmas in 2021. December 18th, an out of control car speeding off of Framingham Road in the middle of the night. It was about, I believe, 1:30 in the morning, and smashed into the front of these poor people's house. The gentleman's name is Chris Kokomazzi and his wife. And this is what ensued. And, it was a terrible, terrible, no one was shockingly killed or even seriously injured, as I understand in the wreck. The driver was charged. But the Kokomatsis were burned out of house and home. The house was, this is the front of the structure. It is the Moses Emery Jenny M. Coffin House. It has some other historic names. Was built according to the Macris, relocated, and this is a very house with a very interesting and extensive history. It was moved actually in the 1880s from an earlier location, and there's some evidence that the house may have existed by even in the middle of the 19th century. And without getting into the details, anybody that's interested in this can go on the Macris database, look up 89 Framingham Road, and you come up with it's a rather extensive report on this particular house. It was historically significant. It is architecturally significant. It has a lot of, you can see it in the, this is a news photo. Actually, I'm giving a little plug for my Southborough because this is where these photos appeared. It has this wonderful sort of scalloped verge boarding along the gable end. You can see that in the house. And this house also had this kind of really wonderful window crowns and door crowning. You can actually see that. What you can also see in that photo on the right are the charred remains of the historic house sign that the Historical Commission gave, to mark this house. So it is a significant house architecturally and historically, and unfortunately, it's suffered. It's a rubble foundation, so there was foundational damage. There was obviously heavy smoke and structural damage, and also water damage, of course, from the efforts to put out the fire. I had thought that perhaps there's a back half of this house that isn't pictured in these photos, that perhaps the folks were able to live in it, that portion of it. The answer is no. They've been in an apartment for the last 8 or 9 months. So this is a very, very sad kind of story. Anyway, through the OpenGov site, and I got a message from Laurie Lavoli that they submitted a demolition permit. So because of the vintage of the house, it automatically triggers the notification to us that Laurie is following the dictates of the bylaw. So I was notified, and I was obviously quite concerned. I mean, this is not a case where you want to add to anybody's woes. This is not a case, in other words, of somebody deciding they just don't, their historic house doesn't suit them, or they've inherited a historical house and they don't like it and they want to get rid of it. This is someone that suffered this sort of terrible loss. So my interest was in trying to sort of expedite some kind of answer as quickly as possible. And there was a little bit of delay because the homeowner himself filed the application as opposed to a contractor. And it was a little bit incomplete, quite frankly. And one of the provisions of the demolition delay bylaw, which I was trying to follow to the letter, requires the applicant to go back and say what they're going to replace, if they're demoing, what they're going to go back and replace with. And I was hoping the answer would be, well, we've got sufficient insurance money to go back, and because we love historic houses, we're going to rebuild exactly what was there, which would have made our lives much easier. Unfortunately, and there's no point in sort of getting deeply into the weeds on this, but there was obviously delay over insurance, and I don't think the house was, as can be the case, sufficiently insured to go back with what was there. And I asked for further clarification That clarification itself was unclear. Eventually, I was able to speak to the applicant on the phone, and we had a very nice conversation. And it was clear that, you know, there are three options, right? He can sell the house as is, which is unsellable. It's a, you know, essentially a total loss. He could commit a great deal of money out of pocket to try to make up for the shortfall in insurance, or tear down. And ultimately, it came out that his preference was to demolish. So I was prepared to call a quick meeting because, as it so happens, the 10-day business day requirement for us, you know, the step is first we have to meet to determine whether the house is historically and or architecturally significant. If we do, then we have 45 business days to hold a hearing. Well, first of all, I did not want to hold this gentleman up and his wife and his family and his life a second longer than was absolutely necessary. As it turns out, the expiry of the 10-day period, the initial 10-day period, was going to be yesterday. So initially I'd asked him if he'd give us one more day and enter that into the system, and he was agreeable to that. And then that didn't happen. And so I was prepared to call an emergency meeting, you know, a quick meeting with a one-item agenda to deal with this. However, Laurie Lavoli, the building commissioner, reached out to me, and she said, you know, I haven't dealt with this particular situation before, but this is very complicated because I have reservations about the safety and the structural viability of this building. And she suggested that we meet with town council. So town council has office hours. I believe that was on a Wednesday or a Thursday. And I thought that was an excellent suggestion. And I made my way to the townhouse, and the building commissioner and I met with Mr. Tallerman, who is the town council. And we laid out the facts of the situation. She wanted some guidance. I wanted some guidance. And, you know, realized that if we had gone through the normal process, what would have happened? We absolutely had to, based on the Macris information alone and the historic house sign, we would have voted that the house was historically and architecturally significant. Then that triggers the full hearing. Well, what can be the result of the hearing? There are only two outcomes. One is we vote not to preferentially preserve it, and we let the applicant go forward and tear down, or B, we vote to preferentially preserve it, and we make him wait for 9 months to do the, you know, and it was clear there would be no appetite for that. And again, this is someone who's suffered, you know, a fairly tragic loss of their home through, you know, accident. So in consultation with town council, it was town council's opinion that an emergency order of demolition was both warranted and prudent. An emergency declaration by the building commissioner takes the historical commission out of it completely. Doesn't require a meeting, doesn't require a hearing, doesn't require nothing. And it was his urging that, given the facts of the case, given the extraordinary circumstances, given the building commissioner's concern about safety and his concern about safety and liability, that that was the correct course of action. And on that basis, I concurred. I didn't, you know, and so that's where we're at. And the building was released and can go forward. And so, you know, this is, in a way, it's purely informational, but a very important thing to know. I did discuss with town council. I expressed my concerns about process and precedent. And he reassured me on both points that due to the extraordinary and quite unusual nature of the circumstances and the loss, that there was really no precedent being set here, and that the process that I was following was the correct one in deferring to the building commissioner's judgment about the viability of the structure. So that's where we're at. Does that make sense to everybody? And I'm sorry for the long-winded explanation, but I thought it was very important to get this on the record.
Yeah, understood. And thanks for explaining.
Yeah, I mean, it's a terrible loss, you know, and I feel so sorry for this. And I couldn't imagine there would be any of us that would want to put people that went through that, what you're looking at on screen, through 5 more minutes of any kind of grief, because I think they've had a hard road. And there was a GoFundMe for them, which citizens of the town very generously contributed to. And so I wish them well and, you know, progress towards sort of recovering their lives. And I thought that it was the right thing to do. And I'm very grateful to the building commissioner for suggesting the step and for town council for his advice. So anybody have anything on that? Otherwise, I'll move on. Nope. Thank you, everyone, for your indulgence. So, all right, where are we? Grant, can you just give us the an update on the working group meets again on Thursday, and maybe VHB and what's going on there? And
Yeah, sure.
Kevin, could I jump in, Kevin, just as a point of order, considering the hour, and I hate to do this, but I would be willing to meet at another time to wrap up the agenda, considering just where we are and the how many more things are to do here.
Well, what I was going to suggest is actually after just Grant's brief update, that maybe we, if it's okay with everybody, simply approve the minutes. We've already been through the scenic roads bylaw, and maybe table the election business, if everyone's okay with it, until our next meeting, unless that's, I don't think that causes any kind of procedural or any, is that all right?
All right, all right.
I think we only have a couple items left.
Sorry to be, I've got a new knee, and it's not doing a 3-hour meeting very well.
I know, and I'm grateful for you hanging in there. So, Grant, yeah, give us a quick one, and then we'll move on.
Yes, I will be very brief for Jim's sake.
And I am at this stuff.
No,
yeah, so we had our last working group meeting. I think it was a couple weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks, or coming up on 3 weeks ago. And we met with the. It was after our last historical meeting with Greg Walver, yeah. So we met with Michael Kluchman, I believe is his last name, who's the landscape architect for VHB, and yeah, it was a really great meeting. We kind of had come up with a list of prioritization for different ideas that we'd like to see, implemented in the park, and we were just trying to kind of, have a dialogue with him about what would be feasible, whether or not, we were kind of on the right track about being able to, actually achieve any of those, having any of those in a final design. And yeah, I think it was a really positive conversation. And essentially where we left it off was that he was going to go back and create some essentially mock-up, I think we hopefully will be getting a couple of different options about, different designs based on what we want to prioritize. My understanding, and I unfortunately missed the meeting, but I heard about it, was that the select board met last week to authorize, I think it was $7,000 or somewhere around there, for the new designs. And so that would be for not just the kind of sketches that he's going to be presenting to us this week, but also I think fully engineered designs. Is that right, Kevin? I'm I'm not sure about that part actually, but
I'm unclear how far $7,000 goes with those. type of
okay. So
folks.
forgot I said that. $7,000 towards design, let's just say. And so, yeah, we're going to be meeting on Thursday, and he will be presenting us hopefully with a kind of a range of design options. And, the working group was, I think, kind of had reached its, had kind of reached as far as it could go without actually seeing anything on paper is how we were feeling about it. And so we think it's a positive step to actually get some drawings to at least have a baseline off of to work with and go from there. So that's where things stand. The meeting on Thursday, I think at 7 is, the next kind of big development for that. So, yeah.
And one thing I'd throw in pursuant to our concerns in this whole matter is that Greg Waller got back to me actually Thursday night, indicating that they've received approval. That's ACS, Archaeological Consulting Services, has received approval from the state to move forward with the dig. He and I have been back and forth several times by email over the last couple of days. He doesn't have the exact date firmed up yet, but I expect the dig to take place somewhere around Labor Day, give or take, before or after. I'm not quite sure, but it's imminent, which is very good news. So we'll have hopefully some answers about what's there or what isn't there in short order. He's been reaching out. He's reached out to me a couple of times, like seeking certain information, which actually Sally Waters at the Historical Society has been very helpful in trying to get for me. So hopefully the dig, gives us an answer. So thank you, Grant. We will skip the officer stuff. We've already done the scenic roads bylaw. We need to approve meeting minutes for July 19th. Kate did a stupendous job on these. I love having the numbered things. I've given my feedback. You made the adjustments. Does anybody have any emendations, corrections at this point for Kate on the minutes? Super.
I thought that was great.
Oh, thanks, Grant.
Fantastic. So can I, and Kate, Kate, I want to institute the process that you suggested for making motions, and it's the way the planning board does it. And I always admire the way they do it.
Me too. I do too. Yes.
Just say, roll call vote, Miller, aye.
That's it.
And then everybody knows their order and they just say it.
I know, I love it.
Oh God, it would make my life so much easier because as you can see, I've got my hands full.
But now in this case, because I wrote the minutes, I'd rather not make the motions.
Right.
So it's just like when I'm in the clerk's office, I won't post these minutes. I post all the others. So this will be one of those like that. It would be great if Jim would make the motion, then Annie would second, if nobody minds working down that.
I was just checking your nomenclature on what you recommend. So yes, so move to accept.
Second.
Wow. Okay. So moved and seconded to accept the meeting minutes of July 19, 2022. Roll call vote. Miller, aye.
Battles, aye.
Blaschke, aye.
Annie, you there?
Oh, yes, I'm here. Sorry, Thaf. Yes.
Barrington, aye.
Okay, perfect.
Well done. That was our first. Yay. Wow. Feels good. I'm that perked me right up. I feel much better. Right. Any other business? Jim, there's no other business. Forget it. The only thing now is we have anybody public comment, and it's only somebody downstairs in my house and Mr. Stivers. If you have anything to say, either one of you, we would love to hear it. Otherwise, we're going home.
Well, we need to set our date for September, do we not?
We have it for September.
Oh, yeah, we do. Anybody want to tell me what that is?
I've got it.
Great.
Tuesday, September 20th at 7 p.m.
Okay.
when our next scheduled meeting, we have no meeting scheduled after that, but we will revisit this in September. Jim can go flex his knee. Speedy, I didn't know you had knee, a replacement?
Yep. Yep.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. It's doing better every day, but it doesn't do well sitting still.
You're in well,
That's a real tough surgery.
yeah, and bless you for sitting through all this craziness for.
I gotta go do my exercises. But anyway, I think it's over to Kate to propose a motion to adjourn.
Yep, motion to adjourn at 10:22 PM.
Seconded.
Roll call vote. Miller, aye.
Battles, aye.
Blaschke, aye.
Barrington, aye.
You guys just made my night with this. I mean, I'm just crazy happy. Thank you. Good night. And may we never have another meeting this long, ever.
Well, maybe we'll just put start times on the agenda topics.
I think we might, yeah.
Yeah, something like
Good
that.
night. Help us with that.
Well, there was a lot of stuff, I mean, and, getting off at the beginning with a long presentation and then having to look at various designs and, takes time, but thank you
I
all.
think it's a reflection of all the great work our commission has been doing lately. So
We've had a lot of stuff, that's for sure, but
Sure.
I appreciate you all. I really, really do. And thank you and good night.
Appreciate you, Kevin. Don't misunderstand.
Oh, yeah,
It's okay.
absolutely. Good night, you guys. Nice to see you all.
You
Bye.
too.
Have a good night.